The CEO stood frozen in the doorway as the single father's voice cut through the birthday party silence. I don't care what any of you think. I love her. 30 pairs of eyes turned to Clara Bennett, the woman who'd built an empire but couldn't build the courage to admit she'd fallen for a man the world said wasn't enough. What happened next would either destroy everything she'd worked for or prove that the riskiest investment isn't in business. It's in love. If you want to see how a powerful woman and a struggling father shattered every rule to find something real, stick with me until the end. And hey, drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Adrian Hayes had learned to measure time differently than most people. Not in hours or days, but in moments stolen between obligation and exhaustion. 6:15 meant Mia's alarm would go off in exactly 3 minutes, which gave him just enough time to crack 2 eggs into the skillet and set out her favorite cereal bowl, the one with the faded cartoon character she refused to retire despite being 8 years old, and allegedly too mature for such things. The apartment smelled like burnt toast because he'd gotten distracted checking his phone for the 3rd time that morning. No messages. The contracting job he'd bid on last week was still pending, which meant another 72 hours of wondering if he should have lowered his estimate or raised his credentials, neither of which he could actually change now. Dad, you killed the bread again. Mia appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing mismatched socks and a t-shirt she'd already worn twice this week. Her dark hair stuck up in 3 different directions, a cowlick situation he'd long since given up trying to manage. It's called extra crispy, Adrian said, scraping blackened crumbs into the trash. Very sophisticated. Fancy restaurants charge extra for it. Fancy restaurants don't smell like fire. How would you know? When's the last time I took you somewhere fancy? She grinned, sliding into her chair. Never. That's how I know you're lying. He couldn't argue with that logic. Adrian plated the eggs, slightly runny, the way she inexplicably preferred them, and sat down across from her with his own coffee, which had gone cold sometime during the toast crisis. The kitchen window faced east, catching the early light in a way that made the chipped laminate counters look almost acceptable. Beyond the glass, he could see straight into the parking lot where a moving truck had appeared sometime during the night. He'd noticed it on his way back from taking out the trash around 11, but hadn't thought much of it. People moved in and out of the Riverside Apartments complex constantly. Most didn't stay long. The place wasn't terrible, but it wasn't the kind of spot where people put down roots. It was a stopover, a good enough for now kind of existence. Adrian had been here 4 years, which probably said something about his life he didn't want to examine too closely. Somebody's moving into 4C, Mia said, following his gaze. I saw them last night when you made me brush my teeth. Made you? I seem to remember you going willingly, after you threatened to read the boring book. Charlotte's Web is a classic. It's about a pig who almost dies. That's not a bedtime story, Dad. That's trauma. He bit back a smile. She'd learned the word trauma from some YouTube video and had been deploying it with alarming frequency ever since. Everything was trauma now. Vegetables were trauma. Bedtime was trauma. The fact that her best friend Emma got a new bike while Mia was still riding the one with the wobbly training wheels, that was legitimate trauma, Dad. Like, seriously. Did you see who was moving in? Adrian asked, turning his attention back to the window. A lady. She had really nice clothes, like business clothes. And she was bossy. Bossy how? She told the moving guys exactly where to put everything. She had a clipboard. Adrian raised an eyebrow. A clipboard at 11 at night? I'm just telling you what I saw. The moving truck was still there, though the activity had apparently stopped. He could see boxes stacked near the entrance to the building, the kind of expensive-looking containers people rented from those boutique moving companies that charged by the hour and provided insurance for your grandmother's china. Not exactly the typical Riverside demographic. Eat your eggs, he said. Bus comes in 20 minutes. Mia made a face but obeyed, stabbing at the runny yolk with her fork. Are you working today? Depends. Might hear back about the Jefferson job. The bathroom one? Kitchen remodel, but yeah, same people. She nodded seriously, as if she understood the intricacies of contractor bidding and profit margins. Maybe she did. She'd been hearing him stress about work since she was old enough to understand that money didn't just appear. Her mother had left when Mia was 2. Packed a bag one Tuesday afternoon and drove to California with a guy she'd met at her yoga studio. Adrian had gotten divorce papers in the mail 6 weeks later, and full custody by default when Jessica never showed up to contest it. He didn't talk about that much. Mia didn't ask. Some things were better left in the past, buried under enough years that they stopped hurting and just became facts. Your mom left. We're okay anyway. End of story. Except it wasn't the end, was it? It was the middle. Every single day was the middle of something unfinished. I think you'll get it, Mia said quietly. Yeah? Yeah, you're good at building stuff. His chest did something complicated. Thanks, kid. They finished breakfast in comfortable silence, the kind that only happened between people who'd logged enough hours together to not need constant conversation. Adrian cleaned up while Mia brushed her teeth, willingly this time, and grabbed her backpack, which was covered in pins she'd collected from various gas stations and tourist traps during their rare road trips. The bus stop was a block away, just far enough that he always walked her there, but close enough that she'd started lobbying to go alone. He wasn't ready for that yet. Maybe when she was 10, maybe when he was 50 and had finally stopped seeing every stranger as a potential threat. The September morning was cool but not cold, the kind of weather that made you think about jackets but didn't actually require one. A few other kids clustered near the stop, their parents standing in a loose semicircle, making the kind of small talk that Adrian had never quite mastered. He knew their faces, could maybe produce a first name if pressed, but he'd never been good at the casual friendship thing. He was polite. He waved. He kept moving. There she is again, Mia whispered, tugging his sleeve. Adrian followed her gaze. A woman stood near the entrance to their building, phone pressed to her ear, her free hand gesturing sharply as she spoke. Even from a distance, everything about her posture screamed impatience. She wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Her dark hair pulled back in a style that looked effortless, but definitely wasn't. The clipboard Mia had mentioned sat on top of one of the boxes beside her. That's the lady? Adrian asked. Yep, told you. Fancy. Fancy didn't quite cover it. The woman looked like she'd taken a wrong turn on her way to a corner office and somehow ended up at Riverside Apartments by mistake. She didn't belong here. Not in a snobbish way, just in an obvious, factual way. People who carried themselves like that didn't live in buildings where the elevator only worked half the time and the landlord took 3 weeks to fix a leaky faucet. The bus rumbled up to the curb, brakes hissing. Mia hugged him quickly, still young enough not to be embarrassed by public affection, and climbed aboard, finding a seat near the window. She pressed her palm to the glass. Adrian pressed his back, their usual routine, and watched until the bus turned the corner and disappeared. When he turned back toward the apartment, the woman was gone. The boxes remained, stacked neatly, waiting. By noon, Adrian still hadn't heard about the job, which meant he spent 3 hours cleaning the apartment, fixing the cabinet door in the bathroom that had been hanging crooked for a month, and trying not to check his phone every 5 minutes. He was halfway through organizing Mia's bookshelf, a task she'd be furious about since she had her own system, which mostly involved chaos, when he heard voices in the hallway. Not unusual. The walls at Riverside were thin enough that you could track your neighbors' entire lives if you paid attention. Adrian had learned not to pay attention, but these voices were different, sharp, professional, and one of them definitely belonged to Frank, the building supervisor, who only showed up when something was seriously wrong, or when someone was complaining loud enough to require his intervention. Adrian stepped into the hallway. Frank stood outside 4C, sweating through his polo shirt despite the cool weather, his face locked in the expression of a man who regretted every decision that had led him to this moment. Beside him stood the woman from this morning, still wearing the suit, still holding the clipboard, and currently radiating the kind of controlled fury that made seasoned customer service reps quit on the spot. Completely unacceptable, she was saying, her voice low but viciously calm. I was assured that the unit would be move-in ready. There's water damage in the bathroom, the kitchen outlets don't work, and someone clearly smoked in here despite the lease explicitly stating this is a non-smoking building. Frank wiped his forehead. Ma'am, I understand your frustration. Do you? Because I've been here for 6 hours, I have a call with Tokyo in 40 minutes, and I'm currently standing in an apartment that smells like an ashtray and has no functional lighting in half the rooms. I can get someone out here tomorrow to look at the electrical. Tomorrow? I'm sleeping here tonight. I have furniture arriving in 3 hours. Tomorrow is not acceptable. Adrian should have gone back inside. This wasn't his problem. He had his own broken cabinet doors and unpaid contractor bids to worry about. But he'd also spent the last 4 years doing minor repairs around the building in exchange for reduced rent, which meant he knew exactly which outlets were dead in 4C and how to fix them in about 20 minutes. He cleared his throat. Both Frank and the woman turned to look at him. Up close, she was younger than he'd initially thought. Early 30s, maybe. Her eyes were a sharp gray blue, the kind that probably missed nothing in a boardroom negotiation, and were currently cataloging him with the same efficiency she'd likely applied to the apartment's defects. "I'm Adrian," he said. "4B. I do maintenance work sometimes. If it's just the outlets and the lighting, I can probably handle it this afternoon." Frank's face flooded with relief. "Adrian's great, real handy. He fixed the boiler last winter when the regular guy couldn't make it out." The woman's expression didn't soften. If anything, she looked more skeptical. "You're a licensed electrician?" "No," Adrian admitted. "But I've been doing residential work for 8 years. I know what I'm doing." "Insurance liability will be the same whether I fix it or Frank calls someone who won't show up until next week," Adrian said. "Look, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I live next door. I've fixed half the units in this building. You want to wait for the official guy? That's fine. But if you want working lights tonight, I can do that." She studied him for a long moment, her gaze sharp enough to inventory his worn jeans, his faded Henley, the small scar on his left hand from a table saw incident 3 years ago. He had the distinct sense of being appraised and found wanting, though for what he couldn't say. "How much?" she asked finally. "Nothing. I'm already on the books with Frank. This is just part of the deal." Her eyes narrowed. "People don't work for free. People do favors for neighbors. We're not neighbors yet. I haven't even unpacked." Semantics. Something flickered across her face. Not quite a smile, but not hostility either. "Fine. But if you electrocute yourself, I'm not liable." "Noted." Frank looked like he wanted to kiss Adrian on the mouth. "I'll leave you two to it. Miss Bennett, again, I apologize for the inconvenience. Just send me the amended lease agreement," she said, waving him off. "And make sure the smoke detector clause is enforceable going forward." Frank fled. Adrian didn't blame him. Miss Bennett turned back to Adrian, her clipboard tucked under one arm. "The electrical panel is in the kitchen. I assume you know that." "I do." "I need the overhead lights functional in the living room, kitchen, and bedroom. The outlets can wait until tomorrow if necessary, but I need to be able to plug in my laptop and phone tonight." "Got it. I'll be on a call for the next hour. Try not to make noise." She walked into the apartment, already pulling her phone out. The door didn't quite close behind her. An invitation or an oversight, Adrian wasn't sure. He went back to his place, grabbed his toolbox, and returned to 4C. The apartment was an identical layout to his: galley kitchen, narrow living room, 2 small bedrooms, 1 bathroom that had definitely seen better days. But where Adrian's place had the comfortable clutter of someone who'd lived there long enough to stop noticing the flaws, this one was stark. Empty. A few boxes sat near the window, labeled in neat block print: office, kitchen, personal. Ms. Bennett stood near the window, her back to him, phone pressed to her ear. She was speaking rapidly, in what sounded like flawless Japanese, her tone professional, but not cold. All business. Adrian got to work. The electrical panel was exactly where he expected it to be, and the problem was immediately obvious. Someone had done a hack job on the wiring at some point, probably trying to save money, and now half the breakers were mislabeled or simply dead. He tested each circuit, made notes, and started the repairs. Ms. Bennett's call continued in the background, her voice rising and falling in a rhythm that suggested negotiation. He caught a few words, numbers mostly, and what might have been contract terms, but tuned out the rest. Not his business. 20 minutes later, the lights flickered on. Ms. Bennett paused mid-sentence, glanced up at the overhead fixture, and gave him a brief nod before returning to her call. Adrian moved through the rest of the apartment, checking each room. The bedroom light required a new bulb, which he retrieved from his own stash. The bathroom fixture needed tightening. The kitchen had a short in the switch that took another 10 minutes to trace and repair. By the time he finished, Ms. Bennett had ended her call and was standing in the kitchen doorway, watching him pack up his tools. "All set," Adrian said. "Outlets are live, lights work. You've still got some cosmetic issues. Whoever painted last didn't bother taping, and there's definitely water damage in the bathroom ceiling, but the electrical is solid now." "Thank you," she said. The words sounded slightly unfamiliar in her mouth, like she didn't say them often. No problem. He moved toward the door, but her voice stopped him. You said you do residential work? Yeah, contracting, mostly. Kitchens, bathrooms, general repairs. You have a card. Adrian pulled out his wallet and extracted one of the slightly bent business cards he kept there. Hayes and Son Contracting. The and Son was aspirational, Mia was 8, but it sounded more established than just his name alone. Miss Bennett took the card, studied it briefly, then slipped it into her pocket. I'll keep you in mind. Sure. He left before the silence could get awkward. Check. Mia came home from school full of news about a substitute teacher who'd apparently let them have extra recess, and a boy named Connor who'd brought a lizard for show and tell, and then lost it somewhere near the reading corner. She acted out the entire lizard hunt with dramatic reenactments, complete with sound effects, while Adrian made dinner, spaghetti, because it was Tuesday, and Tuesday meant pasta. Did they find it? Adrian asked, draining the noodles. Nope. Mrs. Clarkson said it probably went into the heating vent, and we should all say a prayer for its journey. That's dark. That's what I said. They ate at the small table near the window, the one that wobbled unless you folded a napkin under the short leg. Mia talked. Adrian listened. The rhythm of it was so familiar it felt like breathing. Halfway through dinner, there was a knock at the door. Adrian frowned. They didn't get visitors. Emma's mom sometimes dropped by to coordinate playdates, but that was usually planned in advance via text message. He opened the door. Miss Bennett stood in the hallway, still wearing the suit but looking slightly less sharp around the edges. Her hair had come partially loose from its clip, and there was a smudge of something, dust maybe, on her left sleeve. I'm sorry to bother you, she said, but I just realized I don't have any food in the apartment and I haven't eaten since 6 this morning. Is there a decent takeout place nearby that delivers? Adrian blinked. Yeah. Dragon Palace does Chinese. Giovanni's has pizza and subs. Both deliver, but Giovanni's is faster. Which would you recommend? Depends what you want. Something that isn't a protein bar from a gas station. Then Giovanni's. Get the chicken parm sub. It's the only thing on the menu worth ordering. She pulled out her phone, presumably to look up the number, but paused. Actually, do you have their number? My phone's almost dead and I haven't set up the Wi-Fi yet. Adrian hesitated, then stepped back. Come in. I'll write it down. Ms. Bennett entered cautiously, her gaze immediately landing on Mia, who was watching from the table with open curiosity. Hi, Mia said. Hello. You're the fancy lady. Adrian winced. Mia. But Ms. Bennett's expression shifted into something that might have been amusement. I suppose I am. You live here? Yep, I'm Mia. That's my dad. We saw you moving in. You have a clipboard. I do. Why? Because I like knowing where things are. That's smart. My dad loses everything. Last week he couldn't find his keys for like an hour, and they were in his hand the whole time. They were in my pocket, Adrian corrected. Same thing. Miss Bennett's mouth twitched. Definitely amusement. Adrian grabbed a notepad from the kitchen counter and scribbled down Giovanni's number. Tell them you're at Riverside Apartments, Building 4. They know the address. Thank you. She took the paper, glanced at Mia again, then back at Adrian. I'm Clara, by the way, Clara Bennett. Adrian Hayes, and you've met Mia. I have. Clara looked at Mia. What are you eating? Spaghetti. Dad makes it every Tuesday because he says routine is important, but really, I think it's because it's easy. Both can be true, Adrian said. Clara nodded slowly. Well, I'll let you get back to your dinner. Thank you for the help today. And the phone number. Anytime. She left, pulling the door closed behind her. Mia waited exactly 3 seconds before stage whispering, Dad, she's really pretty. Eat your spaghetti. I'm just saying. I know what you're saying. Drop it. But Mia grinned like she'd won something, and Adrian had the sinking feeling that his 8-year-old daughter had just decided to make his life complicated. Clara Bennett did not return the next day, or the day after that. Adrian saw her exactly once, getting into a sleek black car at 6 in the morning, wearing another immaculate suit, her hair perfect, her expression unreadable. She didn't look in his direction. He told himself he wasn't disappointed. Why would he be? She was just a neighbor, a temporary one, probably, Women like that didn't stay in places like Riverside. On Thursday, the Jefferson job came through. Not the full contract he'd hoped for, but enough work to keep him busy for 3 weeks and cover next month's rent with a little extra. Adrian took Mia out for ice cream to celebrate, and they sat on the bench outside the shop watching the sunset and arguing about whether mint chocolate chip was an acceptable flavor or toothpaste pretending to be dessert. Life continued. Normal. Manageable. And then Saturday morning happened. Adrian woke to the sound of something crashing in the hallway, followed by a very creative string of swearing. He checked the time, 7:30, which meant Mia would sleep for at least another hour, and dragged himself out of bed. The hallway was chaos. Clara Bennett stood surrounded by approximately 15 grocery bags, a toppled box of what looked like office supplies, and a variety of items that had clearly escaped during the crash: apples, pens, a rolled-up yoga mat, and inexplicably, a single high-heeled shoe. She looked up as Adrian emerged, her expression hovering somewhere between fury and exhaustion. "Don't," she said. "Don't what?" "Offer to help. I don't need help. I just need my hands to spontaneously multiply." Adrian surveyed the damage. "What happened?" "I thought I could carry everything in one trip. I was wrong. This is me admitting I was wrong. Are you happy?" "Weirdly, yes." She glared at him. Adrian bent down and started gathering apples. "Where do these go?" "I said I don't need help. And I'm offering anyway. Crazy how that works." For a moment he thought she might actually argue, but then her shoulders sagged just slightly and she sighed. 4C kitchen counter. They worked in silence, making multiple trips between the hallway and her apartment. Clara's place had transformed since he'd last seen it. Furniture now filled the space, clean-lined and modern, the kind of stuff from stores that didn't list prices on their websites. Bookshelves lined one wall, already half filled with what looked like business texts and a surprising number of novels. The kitchen showed signs of actual use: a coffee maker on the counter, a fruit bowl, real food in the fridge when he opened it to put away the milk. She lived here, actually lived here. "You didn't have to do this," Clara said as he set down the last bag. "I know. I'm perfectly capable." "I know that too." She studied him, her gray-blue eyes searching for something. "Why are you being nice to me? Why wouldn't I be? Most people want something. I'm not most people." Clearly. The silence stretched between them, not quite uncomfortable, but weighted with something Adrian couldn't name. "Your daughter," Clara said finally. "Mia. She seems very spirited." Adrian smiled. "That's a polite word for it." "I meant it as a compliment. She'd like you. She already thinks you're fancy." "I'm not fancy. I'm just—" Clara paused, seeming to reconsider her words. "I'm very good at looking like I have everything together." "And do you?" "Does anyone?" "Fair point." Adrian moved toward the door, but Clara's voice stopped him again. "I'm having trouble with the thermostat," she said abruptly. "It's either Arctic or surface of the sun. No middle ground." "That's a known issue in this building. The units are old and the calibration's off. I can take a look if you want." "Now?" "Unless you have somewhere to be." She glanced at her watch, expensive, minimal, the kind that doubled as a status symbol, then shook her head. "No, now is fine." The thermostat was in the living room, mounted on the wall near the bookshelf. Adrian popped the cover off and immediately saw the problem: corroded wiring and a sensor that had probably stopped working accurately sometime during the previous administration. "You need a new one," he said. "This thing's shot." "Can you install it?" "Yeah, they're about $30 at the hardware store. I can grab one this afternoon if you want." "I'll pay you for your time." "Clara, I'm serious. You can't keep doing work for free." "It's a thermostat. It takes 15 minutes. Then I'll pay you for 15 minutes." They stared at each other. Adrian had the distinct sense he was being tested, though for what, he had no idea. "Fine," he said. $20. Final offer. 40. That's not how negotiating works. It is when I'm the one with the money. He couldn't help it. He laughed. "You're kind of terrifying, you know that?" Something flickered across her face. "I've been told that before." "I meant it as a compliment." Her expression softened, just barely. "I know." "But Adrian installed the new thermostat that afternoon while Mia sat cross-legged on Clara's couch, providing running commentary about absolutely everything. Dad's really good at fixing stuff, Mia informed Clara, who was working on her laptop at the kitchen counter. One time our toilet broke and he fixed it with YouTube and a wire hanger. That sounds resourceful, Clara said, not looking up from her screen. It was gross. There was water everywhere. But he did it anyway because he said plumbers are expensive. Mia, Adrian warned. What? They are. Clara's mouth twitched. She was trying not to smile, Adrian realized, actively fighting it. What do you do? Mia asked, swiveling to face Clara directly. I run a company. What kind of company? We develop software for financial institutions. Mia's face scrunched up. What does that mean? It means I help banks not lose people's money. Oh, that's important. I think so. Do you like it? Clara finally looked up from her laptop, her expression thoughtful. Most days. What about the other days? The other days I wonder why I didn't become a park ranger. Mia laughed. You don't seem like a park ranger. Why not? You're too fancy. Park rangers wear like khaki and stuff. You wear... Mia gestured vaguely at Clara's weekend outfit, which was still nicer than anything Adrian owned. Yeah, that. Maybe I have secret khaki. Do you? No. See? Too fancy. This time Clara did smile, a real one that transformed her entire face. Adrian nearly dropped the screwdriver. All set, he managed, snapping the thermostat cover back into place. Should hold steady at whatever temp you set it to now. Thank you. Clara stood, retrieving her wallet from her bag. She pulled out 2 20s and held them out. Adrian took the money, knowing better than to argue this time. Come on, Mia, he said. Let's let Clara get back to work. Can I come back sometime? Mia asked, hopping off the couch. You have really good light in here. It'd be perfect for reading. Clara's expression flickered, surprise maybe, or something softer. If your father says it's okay. Mia turned pleading eyes on Adrian. He should say no. He should establish boundaries, keep things professional, not let his 8-year-old daughter invite herself into the neighbor's apartment like they were old friends. We'll see, he said, which was parent code for, probably yes, but I need to pretend I'm thinking about it. Mia beamed. They left Clara standing in her perfectly organized apartment, and Adrian tried very hard not to think about the way she'd smiled when Mia called her fancy. Sunday morning, Adrian woke to find Mia already dressed and sitting by the door with a book in her lap. What are you doing? He asked, pouring coffee. Waiting. For what? Clara said I could come read in her apartment because the light's good. Remember? Adrian vaguely remembered something along those lines, though he'd assumed it was one of those polite things adults said to kids without actually meaning it. Mia, I don't think... A knock at the door interrupted him. Adrian opened it to find Clara standing in the hallway wearing jeans. Actual jeans, not designer ones, just regular jeans, and a plain gray sweater. Her hair was down, loose around her shoulders, and she looked about 5 years younger than she had in the suit. Good morning, she said. I was wondering if Mia wanted to come over. I'm working from home today and the apartment's very quiet. I thought she might like the change of scenery. Mia was already on her feet, book clutched to her chest. Adrian looked between them, his daughter's hopeful face, Clara's carefully neutral expression. You sure? He asked Clara. She's not exactly quiet. I like not quiet sometimes. Okay, but Mia, you have to actually read. No bothering Clara while she's working. I won't, I promise. Mia darted into the hallway before Adrian could add more caveats. Clara's expression shifted into something that might have been amusement or might have been terror. Hard to tell. I'll bring her back in an hour, Clara said. Take your time. She nodded and turned to leave, Mia already chattering beside her about the book she'd brought. Something about dragons and friendship and a quest that Adrian had stopped following around Chapter 3. He watched them disappear into 4C, the door clicking shut. And then he stood there, coffee in hand, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. An hour turned into 2, then 3. Adrian considered checking on them around the 90-minute mark, but decided against it. If Mia was being a problem, Clara would bring her back. Probably. He used the time to prep for the Jefferson job, reviewing measurements, double-checking his supply list, returning emails from 2 other potential clients who'd reached out after seeing his work on a neighborhood Facebook group. Good stuff. Normal stuff. The kind of Sunday morning that reminded him his life was actually pretty stable, all things considered. At noon, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mia asked if she can stay for lunch. I'm ordering sandwiches. Is that okay? Clara. Adrian stared at the message. He typed, "You don't have to feed her." Clara. I know, but I'm hungry and she's here seems efficient. Adrian. What does she want? Clara. Turkey and cheese. No tomatoes, extra pickles. She was very specific. Adrian smiled despite himself. Sounds right, thanks. Clara. No problem. He set the phone down, then picked it up again. Adrian. How's she doing? Not talking your ear off? The reply came faster this time. Clara. She's wonderful. Smart kid. Something warm settled in Adrian's chest. Adrian. Yeah, she is. When Mia finally returned at 2 o'clock, she was practically vibrating with excitement. Dad, Clara has a standing desk, and she showed me how to code, like actual code. I made a button that changes colors when you click it. Adrian looked past her to where Clara stood in the doorway, looking slightly overwhelmed but not unhappy. We got a little sidetracked from reading, Clara admitted. I can see that. She's very quick, picked up the basics faster than some of my junior developers. Mia preened. Well, thanks for entertaining her, Adrian said. I'm sure you have better things to do with your Sunday. Clara's expression shifted, something unreadable passing across her face. Actually, this was the best part of my day. She said it quietly, almost like she hadn't meant to say it out loud. Mia grabbed Adrian's hand. Can I go back next week? We'll see. That means yes. That means we'll see. But when Adrian met Clara's eyes over Mia's head, he saw the answer there. Yes, Mia could come back. Yes, Clara wanted her to. And that scared him more than he wanted to admit. The week that followed established a pattern Adrian hadn't anticipated. Monday morning, he ran into Clara at the building entrance. She was leaving for work. He was taking Mia to the bus stop. Clara nodded at them both, professional and distant, her suit back in place like armor. Tuesday evening, Clara knocked on their door with a package that had been delivered to her apartment by mistake. Mia invited her in. Clara stayed for 10 minutes, perched on the edge of the couch, while Mia showed her a drawing she'd made at school, a dragon with improbable anatomy and what appeared to be a top hat. Very creative, Clara said seriously. Dad says I should be an artist. Your dad might be right. Wednesday, Adrian fixed a leaky faucet in Clara's bathroom. She tried to pay him again. He refused. They argued about it for 5 minutes before Clara finally gave up and made him coffee instead. Good coffee, the kind from beans she'd apparently ground herself that morning. Thursday, Mia asked if she could do homework at Clara's place because the light's better and also Clara has better snacks. Friday evening, Adrian found himself knocking on Clara's door with a casserole dish. She opened it looking exhausted, her hair disheveled, her eyes slightly red. Bad day? Adrian asked. Terrible day. She noticed the dish. What's that? Leftover lasagna. I made too much. Thought you might want some. Clara stared at the offering like he'd handed her something foreign. You made lasagna? It's not fancy, just the regular kind. I haven't had homemade lasagna in... She paused, calculating. 8 years, maybe longer. Then you're overdue. She took the dish carefully, like it might break. Thank you. You okay? I will be. She glanced back into her apartment, then at Adrian. Do you want to come in? I have wine. Or beer, if you prefer. Adrian should say no. He should take the empty dish and go back to his own apartment where things were simple and safe and didn't involve beautiful, complicated women who looked at him like he might be something worth keeping. Sure, he heard himself say. Let me just check on Mia. Mia was sprawled on the couch watching a nature documentary about penguins, completely absorbed. I'm going next door for a bit, Adrian said. You good? Yep. Call if you need me. Yep. He returned to Clara's apartment. She'd set out 2 glasses of red wine and was plating the lasagna onto actual dishes. White ceramic, minimalist, expensive looking. They sat at her kitchen counter, eating in comfortable silence. "This is really good," Clara said after a few bites. "It's just lasagna." "No, it's care. Someone caring enough to cook something from scratch." She set down her fork. "I eat a lot of takeout." "Nothing wrong with takeout. There is when it's all you eat." She took a sip of wine. "I'm not very good at this." "At what?" "Domestic life, normal life. I work 80 hours a week and I'm good at it. Great at it, actually. But this," she gestured vaguely at the apartment, at the lasagna, at the space between them. "I don't know how to do this." "You're doing fine." "Am I?" She looked at him directly. "Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like I'm faking it. Like everyone can tell I don't belong here." "Here as in Riverside?" "Here as in anywhere that isn't an office." Adrian considered his words carefully. "You stayed home on Sunday. You taught me a basic coding. You invited me in for wine. That's not faking it. That's just living. It doesn't feel like living. It feels like playing pretend. Maybe that's how living starts." Clara was quiet for a long moment, turning her wine glass between her fingers. "Why are you being nice to me?" "You asked me that before. You didn't really answer." "Because you looked like you needed someone to be nice to you," Adrian said honestly. "And because Mia likes you, and because He stopped. "Because you what?" "Because I think you're interesting." Her eyes met his, sharp and searching. "Interesting? Yeah, you're clearly brilliant. You run a company. You speak Japanese. You're terrifying in a suit. But you also can't carry groceries without dropping half of them. And you let an 8-year-old teach you about dragons. And you look at homemade lasagna like it's a miracle." He paused. "That's interesting." Clara's expression had shifted into something vulnerable, something real. "I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything with it. That's not how I'm built. I need a plan, an outcome, a clear set of parameters. What if there aren't any? Then I'm lost." Adrian reached across the counter and gently touched her hand. "You're not lost. You're just here." She looked down at their hands, her breath catching slightly, and then she pulled away. "I should get back to work," she said, her voice suddenly professional again. "Thank you for the food." It was a dismissal, clear and final. Adrian stood. "Yeah, of course." He left the apartment feeling like he'd pushed something too far, crossed a line he hadn't known existed. But when he glanced back before closing his own door, he saw Clara standing at her window, wine glass in hand, staring out at nothing. And he wondered if maybe she was just as lost as he was. The weekend after the lasagna incident, Adrian decided the smartest thing to do was give Clara space, which lasted approximately 48 hours before Mia derailed his entire plan. "I need to ask Clara something," Mia announced Sunday morning, already putting on her shoes. Adrian looked up from his coffee. "What do you need to ask her?" "It's private." "Mia, it's about girl stuff." "What girl stuff? You're 8. She gave him a look that suggested he was being deliberately obtuse. "Dad, I can't talk to you about everything." "Since when?" "Since now. Can I go over there or not?" Adrian wanted to say no, wanted to establish some kind of boundary that would protect him from whatever was happening between him and Clara, this thing that felt too big and too complicated and too much like hope. But Mia was staring at him with those wide brown eyes, the ones she'd inherited from her mother, along with the stubborn chin and the ability to make him feel like the worst parent alive when he disappointed her. "Fine," he said, "but if she's busy, you come right back." "She's never busy on Sundays. She told me Sundays are for not work." "When did she tell you that?" "Last week. We talk about stuff." Mia was out the door before Adrian could process that statement. He stood there holding his coffee, trying to figure out when his daughter and his neighbor had developed their own private relationship, trying to figure out if he should be concerned or grateful or something else entirely. His phone buzzed 10 minutes later. "Clara, Mia's here. She wants to bake cookies. Do you have vanilla extract? I have everything else, apparently." Adrian, "Check the cabinet above the microwave. Should be there." Clara, "Found it. Thank you." A pause, then another message. Clara, "You're welcome to join us. If you want." Adrian stared at the text. It was casual, friendly, the kind of thing neighbors said to each other all the time. Except it didn't feel casual. It felt like an olive branch after he'd pushed too hard on Friday night, like Clara was trying to find a way back to whatever they'd been before he'd touched her hand and made everything weird. Adrian, I'll be over in 5. He changed his shirt, which was stupid. It was just baking cookies, and headed next door. Clara's apartment smelled like sugar and butter. Mia sat at the kitchen counter wearing one of Clara's aprons, which was approximately 3 sizes too big and made her look like she was drowning in fabric. Clara stood beside her, also wearing an apron, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, flour smudged on her left cheek. She looked younger, softer, real. "Dad!" Mia waved a wooden spoon. "We're making chocolate chip cookies from scratch. Clara didn't even know you could do that. She thought cookies just came from the store." "I knew you could make them," Clara protested. "I just never had." "That's so sad," Mia said seriously. "It really is," Clara agreed. Adrian leaned against the doorframe, watching them. There was something surreal about the scene. This powerful CEO in her expensive kitchen, completely focused on teaching his daughter how to cream butter and sugar, her movements careful and precise, like she approached everything else. "You going to help or just supervise?" Claire asked, glancing at him. "Supervising seems safer. I burn cookies." "How do you burn cookies?" "Talent," Mia giggled. "He burns everything. Last month he burned soup." "How is that possible?" Clara asked. "I got distracted," Adrian said defensively. "For how long?" "Long enough." Clara shook her head, but she was smiling. That real smile that transformed her face and made Adrian's chest do complicated things. They worked together in easy rhythm, Mia narrating every step, Clara following the recipe with the same intensity she probably brought to board meetings, Adrian eventually getting drafted to help scoop dough onto baking sheets. The conversation flowed naturally, touching on everything and nothing. Mia's school project about state capitals, Clara's terrible boss from her first job out of college, the time Adrian had tried to fix his car and ended up making it worse. "You're not great at cars, are you?" Clara observed. "I'm great at buildings. Cars have too many computers now." "Everything has too many computers now," says the woman who develops software. "I'm allowed to be a hypocrite about technology. It's in my contract." The cookies came out perfect, golden brown, slightly crispy at the edges, still soft in the middle. They ate 3 each while they were still warm, sitting around Clara's kitchen counter like it was the most natural thing in the world. "These are really good," Mia said, chocolate smudged on her chin. "We should do this every Sunday." Adrian caught Clara's eye. She looked uncertain, like she wanted to agree but didn't know if she was allowed. "Maybe not every Sunday," Adrian said carefully. "Clara probably has stuff to do." "Not really," Clara said quietly. "Sundays are usually just me and my laptop." "That's sad," Mia repeated. "You mentioned that." "Because it's true." Clara reached over and wiped the chocolate from Mia's chin with a napkin, the gesture so natural and maternal that Adrian had to look away. "What were you going to ask me?" Clara said to Mia. "You said you needed to talk about girl stuff." Mia's expression turned serious. "There's this thing at school on Friday, a father-daughter dance, and I don't really want to go because everyone's going to have fancy dresses and I don't have one. And also I think dances are kind of boring. But Emma's going and she wants me to go and I don't know what to tell her." Adrian felt his stomach sink. He'd gotten the flyer about the dance 2 weeks ago and had been hoping Mia would forget about it. Not because he didn't want to take her, he'd take her anywhere, but because he knew exactly what she meant about the dresses. The other girls would show up in department store outfits their mothers had picked out, hair done professionally, looking like miniature prom queens. And Mia would be wearing whatever they could find at the discount store, her hair in the same ponytail she wore every day, because Adrian had never learned how to do the fancy braids the other dads' wives managed. "Do you want to go?" Claire asked. "I don't know. Maybe, but I don't want to look stupid." "You could never look stupid." "You don't know that. You haven't seen the other girls. They're all really pretty, and they have moms who know how to do hair and makeup and stuff." Claire's expression shifted into something complicated. "Mia, can I tell you something?" "Okay." "I went to a lot of fancy events when I was building my company. Galas, fundraisers, award ceremonies. And every single time, I was terrified that I didn't belong there. That everyone could tell I was faking it. That I wasn't pretty enough or polished enough or whatever enough. But you're like super pretty," Mia said. "And you always look perfect. That's because I learned how to fake it really well. But here's the secret. Everyone's faking it. Every single person at those events was probably just as scared as I was. They just didn't admit it. Mia considered this. So you think I should go? I think you should do whatever makes you happy. If you want to go to the dance, we'll make sure you look amazing. If you don't want to go, that's fine too. But don't skip it just because you're scared of what other people think. How do I know what makes me happy? Clara smiled. That's the hard part. But you're smart. You'll figure it out. Mia nodded slowly, then looked at Adrian. What do you think, Dad? Adrian swallowed hard. I think Clara's right. It's your choice. Would you be sad if I didn't go? No. I'd be sad if you did something you didn't want to do just because you thought you should. Mia was quiet for a long moment, absently breaking apart a cookie. I think I want to go, but I'm still scared about the dress thing. Then we'll handle the dress thing, Adrian said, already calculating how much he could afford to spend. Maybe $50 if he stretched it. 60 if he skipped getting his truck's oil changed for another month. I could help with that, Clara said carefully. Adrian's spine stiffened. We're fine. I didn't mean, I just thought if you wanted, I could take Mia shopping. I'm good at shopping. It's literally the only domestic skill I have. Clarists, it would be fun. For me. I never get to do stuff like this. Mia's eyes had gone wide with hope. Really? You'd take me? If your dad says it's okay. Both of them looked at Adrian. He felt cornered, caught between pride and practicality, between wanting to provide everything for his daughter and knowing that sometimes accepting help wasn't weakness. You don't have to do that, he said finally. I know I don't have to. I want to. Why? Clara met his eyes directly. Because Mia's important, and because I think we're friends now, and friends help each other. Friends. The word sat strangely in the space between them. Okay, Adrian heard himself say, but nothing crazy expensive. This isn't prom. Deal. Mia launched herself at Clara in a hug so sudden and fierce that Clara actually stumbled backward, laughing. And Adrian watched them and tried not to think about how right it looked, how easy, how much like a family. The following Tuesday, Clara picked Mia up from school and took her shopping. Adrian had offered to come along, but Clara had insisted this was a girl thing and he would just slow them down, which left him alone in the apartment, trying to work on estimates for the Jefferson job and failing miserably because he kept checking his phone every 5 minutes. They returned 3 hours later, Mia practically vibrating with excitement, carrying a garment bag and 2 shopping bags full of things Adrian couldn't identify. Dad, look! Mia pulled a dress from the garment bag, deep blue, simple but elegant, with little silver details around the collar. It was perfect. Exactly what Mia would have picked if money had been no object. That's beautiful, Adrian said honestly. And Clara got me shoes and we got our nails done, look! Mia displayed her hands, fingers now painted a sparkly silver that matched the dress details. Adrian looked at Clara, who stood in the doorway looking slightly embarrassed. I may have gotten carried away, Clara admitted. How much do I owe you? Nothing. It was a gift. Clara, Adrian, please, let me do this. She's a great kid and I had fun and I make more money than I know what to do with anyway. Just let me have this. He wanted to argue, wanted to insist on paying her back. But Mia was so happy, practically glowing, and Clara was looking at him with an expression that was half defiant, half pleading. Thank you, he said quietly. Clara's shoulders relaxed. You're welcome. Can I try it on again? Mia asked. I want to show Dad the whole thing. Go for it. Mia disappeared into her bedroom with the garment bag. Clara stepped fully into the apartment, setting down the other bags. You really didn't have to do all this, Adrian said. I know, but I wanted to. And honestly, it was nice. I never get to do normal stuff like that. Shopping's normal for most people? For most people with kids, yeah. Or nieces or friends with kids. I don't have any of that. She paused. I don't really have much of anything outside of work. By choice? By consequence. I spent my 20s and early 30s building a company. 90-hour weeks, constant travel, always being on. There wasn't room for much else. And now, Clara looked toward Mia's bedroom, where sounds of enthusiastic changing were happening. Now I'm starting to wonder what I missed. Before Adrian could respond, Mia emerged wearing the full outfit, dress, shoes, her hair pulled back the way Clara had apparently styled it at some point during their adventure. She looked older, beautiful, terrifyingly close to not being his little girl anymore. "What do you think?" Mia asked, spinning. "I think you look amazing," Adrian said, his voice catching slightly. "Clara helped me pick everything. She said blue was my color." She was right. Mia beamed, then grabbed her phone. "I need to take a picture for Emma." She disappeared again, leaving Adrian alone with Clara. "Thank you," he said again. "Seriously, this means a lot. She's easy to care about." "Yeah, she is." They stood there in his cramped living room, the air thick with things neither of them seemed able to say. Adrian wanted to ask if she'd stay for dinner, wanted to close the distance between them, wanted to know if she felt it too, this pull, this connection, this sense that something was shifting. But Clara's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. She glanced at it, her expression tightening. "I have to take this," she said. "Work thing." "Yeah, of course." She left, already answering the call in that professional voice she used, the one that sounded nothing like the woman who'd spent 3 hours shopping with an 8-year-old. Adrian stood in his empty living room and wondered how he'd ended up here, falling for someone completely wrong for him in every practical way and completely right in every way that mattered. The father-daughter dance happened on Friday, and Adrian was more nervous about it than Mia was. He wore the one dress shirt he owned that didn't have paint stains, paired with khakis that were slightly too short but would have to do. Mia wore her new dress and couldn't stop looking at herself in the mirror. "You look beautiful," Adrian said for the 5th time. "I know. Clara said so too." "When did you talk to Clara?" "She texted me this morning. She wanted to make sure I wasn't nervous." Adrian filed away the information that his 8-year-old daughter and their 30-year-old neighbor were apparently texting now. He'd examine his feelings about that later. The dance was held in the school gymnasium, which had been decorated with streamers and balloons in an attempt to make it look less like a gymnasium. It mostly failed, but the girls didn't seem to care. They clustered in groups, showing off dresses and comparing notes on their dad's dancing abilities. Emma found Mia immediately, squealing about the dress. Adrian stood awkwardly with the other fathers, most of whom seemed to know each other from soccer teams or PTA meetings or whatever social networks he'd never managed to penetrate. "Your daughter looks lovely," one of the moms said, appearing at his elbow. He recognized her vaguely from drop-off. Emma's mother, maybe. "Thanks. Yours too." "That's quite a dress. Where did you find it?" "A friend helped us pick it out." "Well, she has excellent taste." The woman drifted away, and Adrian tried not to feel like he was being evaluated. Tried not to notice how some of the other parents kept glancing at him, probably wondering where Mia's mother was, why he was here alone, whether single fathers could be trusted to handle things like dances and dresses. "Dad, they're starting the dancing part." Mia grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the center of the gym where other father-daughter pairs were gathering. The music was predictably cheesy, classic slow songs that made Adrian feel about 100 years old, but Mia didn't care. She stood on his feet like she used to when she was 4, and they swayed in an approximation of dancing. "This is fun," Mia said. "Yeah? Yeah. Even though you're not very good at dancing. I'm doing my best here." "I know. That's what makes it fun." Adrian laughed, spinning her carefully. Over her head, he could see other daughters with their fathers, and for once, he didn't feel like they were missing something. For once, it felt like enough. The dance lasted 2 hours. By the end, Mia was exhausted and happy, her dress slightly wrinkled, one shoe abandoned under a chair somewhere. Adrian carried her to the truck. She insisted she could walk, but he insisted back, and drove home through the quiet streets. "That was the best night ever," Mia mumbled, half asleep against the window. "I'm glad. Can we tell Clara about it?" "It's pretty late. Maybe tomorrow." "She's probably still awake. She's always awake." Adrian glanced at his daughter. "How do you know that?" "Sometimes I see her light on when I get up for water. She works a lot." "Yeah, she does." They pulled into the Riverside parking lot. Claire's apartment was indeed lit up, a warm glow visible from the street. "See?" Mia said. "Told you." Adrian helped Mia out of the truck, and they made their way upstairs. As they passed Clara's door, Mia knocked before Adrian could stop her. Clara opened it a moment later, wearing sweatpants and an oversized Stanford sweatshirt, her hair piled on top of her head, glasses perched on her nose. She looked nothing like the polished CEO, and everything like someone Adrian could imagine falling asleep next to. How was it? Clara asked, her attention focused on Mia.
So good. We danced and there was punch, and Emma said my dress was the prettiest one there. I bet it was. Dad stepped on my foot twice, but I didn't mind.
Thanks for that detail, Adrian said.
Clara smiled at him, and something in her expression made his breath catch. I'm glad you had fun.
I have pictures. Mia pulled out Adrian's phone, which she'd commandeered for photo documentation. She scrolled through, showing Clara various shots of the decorations, her friends, the two of them dancing. Clara looked at each one carefully, like they mattered, like Mia mattered. These are great, Clara said. You should print some. That's what I said. Dad says printers are expensive. Dad's not wrong, Adrian interjected. I have a printer, Clara offered. If you want, we could print them tomorrow. Make a little album or something. Mia's eyes went wide. Really? Sure. If your dad doesn't mind. Adrian should mind, should establish boundaries, should stop letting Clara get more tangled up in their lives. That sounds nice, he said instead. They said goodnight, and Adrian got Mia ready for bed, listening to her rehash every detail of the evening. By the time she finally fell asleep, it was past 11, and Adrian was exhausted in the good way, the kind that came from doing something right. He stepped out onto his small balcony, the night air cool against his skin. Claire's balcony was next to his, separated by a metal divider that didn't provide much privacy. He could hear her moving around, the soft sound of music playing. She had a good time, Claire's voice came from the other side. Adrian moved to where he could see her. She stood at her railing, still wearing the sweatshirt, a glass of wine in her hand. Thanks to you, Adrian said. I just bought a dress. You did more than that. You made her feel special, important. Clara was quiet for a moment. She is special and important. I know, but it's nice hearing it from someone else, someone she looks up to. She talks about you constantly, you know. My dad did this. My dad built that. My dad makes the best spaghetti, even though it's really just normal spaghetti. You're her hero. Adrian's throat tightened. I'm just trying not to screw her up. You're doing better than just trying. You're actually succeeding. Most days I feel like I'm barely holding it together. Welcome to being human. Clara took a sip of wine. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did her mother leave? Adrian hadn't expected that. Most people didn't ask directly. They danced around it, implied it. Let him volunteer the information if he wanted to. She didn't want to be a mother, he said finally, or a wife, or anything that tied her down. She wanted adventure and freedom, and a life that didn't include a crying baby and a husband who worked too much. He paused. I don't blame her, not anymore. Some people aren't built for that life. Do you miss her? No, I missed the idea of her for a while, missed having a partner. But Jessica herself? No, she made her choice. I made mine. We're both better for it. Clara nodded slowly. I think I understand that, choosing one life and losing another. What did you lose? I don't know. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. She looked at him directly. I chose my career deliberately, aggressively. I wanted to build something that mattered, prove I could do it, and I did. But sometimes I wonder what the alternative would have looked like. You can still have that, the other stuff. Can I? I'm 30 years old, I work 80 hours a week, and I don't know how to make cookies from scratch. What kind of life is that? The one you chose doesn't mean it's the only one you get to have. Clara smiled sadly. You make it sound simple. It is simple. It's just not easy. They stood there in the dark, separated by a thin metal divider and about 1,000 unspoken things. Adrian wanted to climb over, pull her close, tell her that she didn't have to have everything figured out. That messy was okay. That he was messy too, but he didn't. Because Clara was still holding herself at a distance, still treating this, whatever this was, like something she could control if she just found the right formula. I should go to bed, Clara said finally. Early meeting tomorrow. On a Saturday? Tokyo office, time zones are terrible. Right. She turned to leave, then paused. Adrian? Yeah? Thank you for letting me be part of today. It meant something. Anytime. She disappeared inside, and Adrian stood on his balcony alone, wondering how he'd ended up here, wondering what came next. The next few weeks fell into an unexpected rhythm. Clara worked, Adrian took jobs, Mia went to school, and somehow the three of them kept orbiting each other in ways that felt natural and terrifying in equal measure. Clara started joining them for dinner on Thursdays, Adrian's grocery shopping day, which meant he actually cooked something decent instead of defaulting to pasta or sandwiches. She'd show up at 6:30 with wine or dessert, or sometimes just herself, and they'd eat at his cramped table while Mia talked about school, and Clara occasionally checked her phone for work emergencies that couldn't wait. On Saturdays, if Clara wasn't traveling, she'd take Mia to the library or the park, or once to a museum that Mia declared pretty cool, actually. Adrian would use the time to catch up on work, but mostly he'd just miss them and feel guilty about missing them. Sundays remained theirs, the three of them, doing whatever came up, baking, watching movies. Once, inexplicably, building a blanket fort in Clara's living room because Mia had decided that adults didn't have enough fun and needed to remember what it was like to be kids. It was domestic, comfortable, dangerous. Because Adrian could feel himself falling, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do to stop it. The neighborhood noticed, of course. Ms. Chen from 3A mentioned seeing Clara at their place quite often. Frank, the supervisor, made a comment about how nice it was that Adrian had found a lady friend. Even Mia's teacher pulled him aside after school one day to say how wonderful it was that Mia had a positive female role model in her life now. Adrian didn't correct any of them, didn't explain that Clara wasn't his girlfriend, wasn't Mia's stepmother, wasn't anything except their neighbor who happened to be around a lot. Because he didn't know what she was, and he was afraid to ask. Clara, for her part, seemed content with the ambiguity. She'd show up, participate, laugh at Mia's jokes and Adrian's terrible cooking. But she never pushed for more. Never suggested they define what they were doing. Never stayed the night or suggested anything beyond friendship. Which should have been fine. Should have been exactly what Adrian wanted. Something easy, uncomplicated, safe. Except it wasn't. Because every time Clara left, every time she pulled back when they got too close, every time she defaulted to her phone when the conversation got too personal, Adrian felt the distance between them like a physical thing. The breaking point came in late October. Adrian had finished the Jefferson job and picked up 2 more clients through referrals. Good money, steady work, the kind of momentum that made him think maybe he could actually build something real with the contracting business. He celebrated by taking Mia out for ice cream and maybe, possibly, thinking about how he'd tell Clara the good news. She'd been traveling all week, some conference in Seattle that she'd mentioned in passing. She was supposed to be back Friday, but Friday came and went with no word. Saturday morning, her apartment was still dark. Adrian told himself he wasn't worried. She was an adult. She had a life. She didn't owe him updates, but by Saturday afternoon, he was worried anyway. He texted, "Everything okay? Haven't seen you around." No response. Sunday morning, he knocked on her door. No answer. Sunday afternoon, he was about to call the building supervisor when Clara's door finally opened. She looked terrible. Her hair was a mess, her eyes red-rimmed, still wearing what looked like travel clothes from days ago. "Are you okay?" Adrian asked. "Fine." "You don't look fine." "Thanks for that." "Clara." "I'm fine, Adrian. Just tired. It was a long week." She started to close the door, but he stopped it with his hand. "What happened?" "Nothing happened. I'm just exhausted and I need to sleep and I don't really want company right now." "Okay, but if you need anything, I don't." Her voice was sharp, final. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm fine. I just need space." She closed the door before he could respond. Adrian stood in the hallway, feeling dismissed and confused and angry at himself for caring so much about someone who clearly didn't want him to care. Mia found him 10 minutes later, standing by the window, staring at nothing. "Is Clara mad at us?" Mia asked quietly. "No, baby. She's just tired." She looked sad. Sometimes tired and sad look the same. "Should we do something?" "Like what?" Mia thought about it. "Make her cookies? Cookies make everything better." Adrian smiled despite himself. "Maybe tomorrow. I think she needs space right now." But tomorrow, Clara's apartment stayed dark. And the day after that. And the day after that. By Wednesday, Adrian stopped checking, stopped listening for her door, stopped hoping she'd show up for their Thursday dinner. She didn't, and Adrian tried very hard to pretend that didn't hurt. Friday morning, Adrian ran into Clara in the parking lot. Or rather, she was getting into her car just as he was loading supplies into his truck, and there was no avoiding each other without one of them deliberately looking away. She looked better than she had the previous Sunday, put together again, the armor back in place. Charcoal suit, hair perfect, that clipboard tucked under one arm like a shield. "Hey," Adrian said, because ignoring her felt petty.
Hi. Clara's hand was on her car door, body already angled away. Escape position. You doing okay? Fine. Busy week. Yeah, I figured. Silence stretched between them, awkward and thick. Adrian wanted to ask what had happened in Seattle, why she'd shut him out, whether he'd done something wrong, but her expression was so carefully blank that he knew she wouldn't answer, wouldn't let him in. Mia's been asking about you, he said instead. Something flickered across Clara's face. I've been meaning to text her, just haven't had time. Right. More silence. Clara shifted her weight, and Adrian recognized the body language. She was done with this conversation, ready to leave, already mentally gone. I should get going, she said. Conference call in 20 minutes. Sure, see you around. She got in her car without looking back. Adrian watched her pull out of the parking lot and tried to convince himself that the hollow feeling in his chest was just disappointment, not heartbreak. You couldn't have your heart broken by someone who was never yours to begin with. Mia took the absence harder. She'd knock on Clara's door sometimes, forgetting or maybe hoping that things had gone back to normal. When no one answered, she'd get quiet in that way kids did when they were trying not to show they were hurt. Maybe Clara's just really busy with work, Mia said one night, pushing her dinner around her plate. Probably. Do you think she's mad at us? No, baby. I think she's just dealing with stuff. What kind of stuff? Adult stuff. Mia gave him a look that suggested this answer was insufficient. That's not a real answer. It's the only one I have. She went back to pushing food around. I miss her. I know. Do you miss her? Adrian set down his fork. Yeah, I do. Then why don't we do something about it? Like what? I don't know. Make her come over. Or we could go over there. Or we could leave cookies outside her door with a note. Mia, if Clara needs space, we have to give her space. Why? Because that's what you do when you care about someone. You respect what they need, even if it's hard. Mia considered this with the seriousness of someone much older. That sounds stupid. Welcome to being human. But later that night, after Mia had gone to bed, Adrian found himself on the balcony again. Claire's apartment was lit, which meant she was home. He could see her shadow moving behind the curtains, pacing maybe, or just restless. He pulled out his phone, typed out a message, deleted it. Typed another one, deleted that too. Finally settled on something simple. Adrian, if you ever want to talk, I'm here. He sent it before he could overthink it, then immediately regretted it. Too needy, too obvious, too much. His phone buzzed 30 seconds later. Clara. Thank you, I appreciate that. Not I'll take you up on it. Not I need to talk. Just acknowledgement, polite distance. Adrian put his phone away and went to bed and told himself this was fine. People drifted apart all the time. It didn't mean anything. It was just life. Except it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like losing something he hadn't realized he needed until it was gone. The rumor started small. Ms. Chen mentioned to Adrian that she'd seen that CEO woman leaving at odd hours with different men in expensive cars. Frank, the supervisor, made a comment about how people like that never really fit in places like this. Even at Mia's school, one of the other mothers, Emma's mom, who'd always been friendly, pulled Adrian aside with a concerned expression. I heard about your situation, she said carefully. Adrian frowned. What situation? With your neighbor, the one who's been spending time with Mia. Clara? Is that her name? Listen, I'm not one to gossip, but people are talking about how often she's at your place, about what that looks like to others. Adrian felt his jaw tighten. And what does it look like? I'm just saying, as a single father, you have to be careful about optics, about the kind of people your daughter is exposed to. Claire's a good person. I'm sure she is, but she's also a very successful, very visible businesswoman. And you're... She paused, clearly trying to find a diplomatic word. I'm what? You're a contractor. You live at Riverside. You're doing your best, but it's obvious that you and she are from different worlds. And people notice that. They wonder about motivations. Adrian's hands clenched into fists. Her motivation is that she likes Mia, and Mia likes her, that's it. I hope you're right. I'm just looking out for you. And for Mia. She walked away before Adrian could respond, leaving him standing in the school parking lot feeling like he'd been punched. When he got home, Frank was waiting outside his door. Got a minute? Frank asked. Not really. It'll be quick. Just wanted to give you a heads up. There's been some complaints. Complaints about what? About the noise level in your unit, late-night visitors, that kind of thing. Adrian stared at him. I don't have late-night visitors. Mia's in bed by 8:30. I'm just telling you what I heard. From who? Frank shifted uncomfortably. Look, man, I don't want to make this a thing, but some of the other residents are concerned about the company you're keeping. You mean Clara? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Adrian felt his anger rising. She's my neighbor. She's been helping with Mia. There's nothing inappropriate happening. I believe you, but perception matters. And when you've got a woman like that, successful, single, showing up at a single dad's place all the time, people talk. Let them talk. It's not that simple. The landlord's already asked me about it, wanted to know if there were any issues he should be aware of. There aren't. Good. Then there's nothing to worry about. Frank clapped him on the shoulder in a way that felt condescending. Just maybe keep things more low-key, yeah? For everyone's sake. He left, and Adrian stood there feeling a toxic mix of rage and humiliation. People were talking, judging, making assumptions about his life, about Clara, about what they were to each other. And the worst part was that he couldn't even defend it properly because he didn't know what they were. Friends? Almost something more? Nothing at all anymore? He called Clara that night. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Hey, it's me. Can we talk? People are starting to say stuff, and I think we should just call me back when you get this. She didn't call back. By the following week, Adrian had heard at least 5 different versions of what was supposedly happening between him and Clara. One involved her secretly supporting him financially. Another suggested she was using him to improve her regular person image for some business deal. The most insulting one implied that he was taking advantage of a lonely woman for money and connections. Don't listen to them, his friend Marcus said, when Adrian made the mistake of venting over beers. Marcus was one of the few people from his old construction crew he still kept in touch with, someone who'd known him long enough to call him on his bullshit. People always gotta make drama out of nothing. It's not nothing, it's affecting Mia. Emma's mom basically told me I was a bad influence. Emma's mom is a judgmental piece of work. Everyone knows that. Yeah, but she's not wrong about the optics. Claire's this powerful CEO, and I'm some guy who can barely keep his truck running. Of course, people are going to assume the worst. Marcus took a long drink. You know what your problem is? I'm sure you're about to tell me. You care too much about what other people think. Who gives a shit if you're a contractor and she's a CEO? If you like each other, that's all that matters. We're not together. But you want to be. Adrian didn't answer, which was answer enough. So what's stopping you? Marcus pressed. About 1,000 things. Different lives. Different worlds. The fact that she's been avoiding me for 2 weeks. Have you actually talked to her about any of this? I tried. She's not answering. Then try harder. Show up at her door. Make her have the conversation. I can't force her to... Adrian, listen to me. You spent 4 years raising that kid alone, building a business from nothing, dealing with your ex-wife's abandonment and every other piece of crap life threw at you. You're not some charity case. You're a good man who works hard and loves his daughter. If Clara can't see that, that's her loss. But at least make sure she knows what she's walking away from before you let her go. Adrian wanted to argue. Wanted to list all the reasons why Marcus was wrong, why it was more complicated than that, why sometimes caring about someone meant letting them make their own choices, even if those choices hurt. But he didn't. Because maybe Marcus had a point. The opportunity came sooner than expected. 2 days later, Adrian was fixing the mailbox lock in the building lobby when Clara walked in carrying her dry cleaning and looking exhausted. She stopped when she saw him, clearly debating whether to turn around and wait until he was gone. We need to talk, Adrian said before she could make that decision. I'm really tired. 5 minutes. Adrian, please. Something in his voice must have gotten through because she sighed and set down her dry cleaning. Okay, 5 minutes.
They stood in the lobby, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the smell of old carpet and cleaning products surrounding them. Not exactly romantic, but then again, nothing about this had been. "What happened in Seattle?" Adrian asked. Claire's jaw tightened. "Nothing happened in Seattle. You came back different. I came back exhausted. It's more than that. You've been avoiding me, avoiding Mia, avoiding everything. I've been busy." That's an excuse. Maybe, but it's also true. Clara crossed her arms. "Look, I appreciate everything we've built over the past few months, the friendship, the help with Mia, all of it. But I think we both know this isn't sustainable." "Why not?" "Because people are talking, Adrian. I've heard the rumors. About us. About what we're supposedly doing." "So have I. So what? So it's not fair to you. Or to Mia. You don't need that kind of attention. Don't I get to decide what's fair to me?" Clara shook her head. "You don't understand. In my world, perception is everything. And right now, the perception is that I'm either being taken advantage of or I'm slumming it with someone beneath my station. Neither of those things is good for my business." Adrian felt like he'd been slapped. "Is that what you think? That I'm beneath your station?" "No, but that's what everyone else thinks. And their opinion matters more than what we actually are?" "What are we, Adrian?" Claire's voice rose slightly. "We're neighbors. We're friends. We spend time together because it's convenient and pleasant and Mia needed someone. But we were never going to be anything more than that." "Why not?" "Because I don't have room in my life for more. Because you deserve someone who can actually be present, not someone who works 80 hours a week and travels constantly. Because we want different things." "How do you know what I want?" "You want stability, partnership, someone to help raise Mia. I can't be that person." "I never asked you to be." "No, but Mia did. Every time she looks at me like I'm something permanent, something she can count on, and that's not fair to her because I don't know how to be that." Adrian's throat was tight. "So you're just going to disappear? That's your solution?" "I'm going to create healthy boundaries, which I should have done from the start." "Healthy boundaries? That's corporate speak for running away." Clara's eyes flashed with anger. "I'm not running away. I'm being realistic. This," she gestured between them, "was never going to work. We both knew that." "I didn't know that, and I don't think you really believe it either." "It doesn't matter what I believe. What matters is what's practical." "When did you become so afraid of impractical things?" The question hung in the air between them. Claire's expression shifted, something vulnerable breaking through the professional mask. "I'm not afraid," she said quietly. "Yes, you are. You're terrified of me, of Mia, of what we could be if you let yourself actually feel something. That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is you pretending this is about other people's opinions when really it's about you being too scared to take a risk on something real." Clara's hands were shaking. Adrian noticed because she pressed them flat against her sides, trying to control it. "I should go," she said. "Of course you should. That's what you do when things get hard. You leave." "You don't know anything about me. I know more than you think. I know you work yourself to death because it's easier than dealing with the fact that you're lonely. I know you connected with Mia because you want that kind of relationship, but you're too afraid to actually commit to it. I know you felt something for me, and it scared you so badly that you ran to Seattle and came back determined to burn everything down before it could hurt you. Stop." "Why? Because I'm getting too close to the truth?" Clara's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Because you're making this harder than it needs to be." "Good. It should be hard. If it's not hard, it doesn't mean anything." "Adrian, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you don't feel anything when we're together. Tell me watching Mia fall asleep on your couch didn't make you want something you've been too busy to admit you wanted. Tell me you don't think about what we could be." Clara was crying now, silent tears tracking down her face. "I can't do this." "Can't or won't?" "What's the difference?" "Everything." She grabbed her dry cleaning, moving toward the elevator. Adrian wanted to stop her, but his feet wouldn't move. He'd said what needed saying. The rest was up to her. "For what it's worth," Clara said without turning around, "you were right about all of it." The elevator doors closed, and she was gone. Adrian stood in the empty lobby, hands shaking, heart racing, feeling like he'd just destroyed something precious while trying to save it. That night,
Mia asked why he was upset. Just a hard day, Adrian said. Did you and Clara fight? Something like that. Are you going to fix it? I don't know if I can, baby. Mia climbed into his lap, which she was getting too big for, but he'd never tell her that. You always say that things worth having are worth fighting for. I did say that.
So fight for her. It's more complicated than that. Why do adults always say that? Nothing's that complicated. You like her. She likes you. You should be together.
If only it were that simple. If only life worked the way 8-year-olds thought it did.
Sometimes people need space to figure things out, Adrian said. How much space?
I don't know. What if she never figures it out? Then I guess that's her choice.
Mia was quiet for a moment, then said, I think she's just scared. Like when I was scared to go to the dance, remember? I remember. And Clara told me not to let being scared stop me from doing something that might make me happy. Adrian smiled despite himself. She did say that. So maybe someone should tell her the same thing. Out of the mouths of babes, Adrian thought. Out of the mouths of babes.
A week passed with no word from Clara. Adrian threw himself into work, taking on extra jobs, staying busy enough that he didn't have time to think about her. It mostly worked during the day. At night was harder.
Mia's birthday was coming up, November 15th, which gave Adrian exactly 3 weeks to plan something. Normally, he'd do a small party at the apartment, invite a few kids from school, order pizza and a grocery store cake. Simple. Easy. Exactly what a single dad on a budget could manage. But this year felt different. Mia was turning 9. Double digits were on the horizon, and Adrian had this creeping sense that childhood was slipping away faster than he was ready for.
What do you want to do for your birthday? He asked over dinner one night. Mia shrugged. I don't know, normal stuff? Normal stuff like what? Pizza, cake. Maybe we could go to that trampoline place Emma went to. We can definitely do that. Can we invite Clara? Adrian's chest tightened. I don't know if she'll be able to make it. Because she's busy, or because you guys are fighting. Both, maybe.
Mia pushed her broccoli around her plate. I was going to ask her to come even if you didn't want her there.
Why?
Because she's important, and birthdays are for important people. Adrian reached across the table and squeezed Mia's hand. You can invite whoever you want, baby. It's your day. Even if it's awkward? Even if it's awkward. Mia grinned, and Adrian made a mental note to prepare himself for the very real possibility of spending several hours in close proximity to a woman who'd basically told him they had no future. The invitation went out the next day, hand-delivered by Mia, who knocked on Clara's door and waited until she answered. Adrian watched from his own doorway, trying not to eavesdrop and failing completely. Hi, Mia said when Clara opened the door. Hey. Clara looked surprised but not unhappy. What's up? I'm having a birthday party, November 15th at 2 o'clock. It's at Jump Zone. That's the trampoline place on 5th Street. I want you to come. Clara's expression did something complicated. Mia, I don't know if that's a good idea. Why not? Your dad and things are complicated right now. Adults always say that. It's not complicated. It's a birthday party. You come, you jump on trampolines, you eat cake. That's it. It's not that simple.
Yes, it is. You're making it hard because you're scared. Clara blinked. What? You're scared of being around us because you think you'll want to stay, and you don't think you're allowed to want that. How do you... I'm 9. Almost. I noticed stuff. Mia held out the invitation, homemade construction paper with glitter glue that was probably going to get everywhere. Please come. It would make me really happy. Clara took the invitation with shaking hands. I'll think about it. That's adult for probably not. That's adult for I'll actually think about it. Okay. Mia turned to leave, then turned back. For what it's worth, my dad misses you. He won't say it because he thinks it'll make things weird, but he does. And I think you miss him too. She left before Clara could respond, bouncing back into Adrian's apartment with a satisfied expression. What did she say? Adrian asked. She said she'll think about it. That usually means no. That's what I said, but I think she'll come. Why? Because she looked really sad when I mentioned you missing her, and people only look that sad when they miss someone back. Adrian pulled Mia into a hug, marveling at when his daughter had become so perceptive.
and hoping like hell she was right. The next 2 weeks crawled by. Adrian finalized the party plans, ordered a cake, confirmed the reservation at Jump Zone. He hired a teenager from down the hall to help supervise. 12 kids on trampolines seemed like a recipe for chaos without backup. Clara didn't respond to the invitation, didn't reach out. But Adrian noticed her light on late at night more often than usual, noticed her car in the parking lot when it should have been at work. Small signs that maybe she was struggling with this as much as he was. 3 days before the party, Adrian's phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Hayes, this is Jennifer Park from Westside Development Group. Adrian's heart jumped. He'd submitted a bid for a major commercial renovation project 2 months ago and had basically given up hope of hearing back. Yes. Hi. What can I do for you? I'm calling to let you know that we've selected your proposal for the Riverside Plaza project. Pending final contract review, we'd like to start work in January. Adrian sat down heavily. Seriously? Seriously. Your bid was competitive and your references were excellent. We're very excited to work with you. They talked details for another 10 minutes. Timeline, payment schedule, scope. By the time Adrian hung up, his hands were shaking. This was it. The big break. The kind of project that could legitimately establish Hayes and Son Contracting as a real business, not just a side hustle. The kind of money that meant he could move out of Riverside, get Mia into a better school district, maybe even hire help so he wasn't doing everything alone. His first instinct was to call Clara, to share the news with someone who'd understand what this meant, who'd be proud of him. But he didn't. Because Clara had made it clear she didn't want to be that person for him. So instead he told Mia, who shrieked and hugged him, and declared they should celebrate with ice cream for dinner. And they did, sitting in their cramped apartment, eating directly from the carton, laughing about everything and nothing. And if Adrian's mind kept drifting to Clara, to what she'd say if she knew, to whether she'd be happy for him, well, that was nobody's business but his own. The morning of Mia's birthday party arrived gray and cold, the kind of November day that threatened rain but never quite delivered. Adrian woke early, nerves jangling, and spent 2 hours cleaning an apartment that didn't need cleaning and organizing things that were already organized. You're being weird, Mia observed over breakfast. I'm not being weird. You reorganized the spice cabinet. We have like 6 spices. That took you 20 minutes. I was being thorough. You're nervous about seeing Clara. Adrian didn't bother denying it. Maybe a little. She might not even come. I know. But if she does, you should talk to her. Like, actually talk. Not the angry talking you did before. When did you get so wise? I was born wise. You just didn't notice until now. They arrived at Jump Zone at 1:30 to set up. The place was exactly what Adrian had expected. Loud, chaotic, smelling faintly of feet and disinfectant. But Mia loved it immediately, running from trampoline to test them all out. Kids started arriving at 2. Emma and her mom, who gave Adrian a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Connor from Mia's class with his dad, who Adrian had met exactly once and seemed nice enough. 3 other girls from school. A cousin from Jessica's side of the family, who Adrian barely knew but had invited anyway because Mia had asked. By 2:15, everyone was there except Clara. By 2:30, Adrian accepted that she wasn't coming. By 2:45, he had made peace with it and was actually starting to enjoy watching Mia have fun, jumping with her friends, laughing so hard she could barely breathe. At 3 o'clock, Clara walked in. She was dressed down, jeans, a sweater, her hair in a ponytail, minimal makeup. She looked younger, nervous, real. Mia spotted her first, screaming, "Clara!" loud enough that everyone in the building probably heard it. She launched herself off a trampoline and ran, hugging Clara with the full force of her 9-year-old body. Clara hugged her back just as fiercely, and Adrian saw her eyes close, saw her breathe in deep like she'd been holding her breath for weeks and was finally letting it out. "You came," Mia said. "I said I'd think about it. I thought about it. And I couldn't miss your birthday." Mia grinned, then dragged Clara toward the trampolines. "Come on, you have to jump with me." Clara let herself be pulled along, glancing back at Adrian once. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. An apology, maybe, or an acknowledgement, or just the simple recognition that they were both here, both trying, both terrified. Adrian watched them jump together, Clara surprisingly athletic, despite claiming she never exercised, Mia showing off her tricks, both of them laughing, and something in his chest loosened, just a little. The party continued in a blur of activity. Cake was eaten, presents were opened, kids were supervised as they attempted increasingly dangerous trampoline stunts. Clara stayed the whole time, helping where needed, talking to the other parents with that professional charm she probably used in business meetings, making it all look effortless. But Adrian noticed the way she kept watching him, the way she'd start to say something and then stop, the way she positioned herself near him but never quite close enough to touch. When it was over and the last kid had been picked up, when the staff was cleaning up and Mia was crashed on a bench with a sugar headache, Clara finally approached. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Yeah." They stepped outside into the cold November evening. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, and Adrian had to resist the urge to offer her his jacket. "I'm sorry," Clara said, "for everything, for running away, for being a coward, for hurting you and Mia." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. Because you were right about all of it. I was scared. I am scared of what you make me feel, of what it would mean to actually let myself have this. And now I'm still scared, but I'm more scared of losing you both completely." She looked at him directly. "I don't know how to do this, Adrian. I don't know how to be someone's person. I don't know how to balance a relationship with my work. I don't know how to be what Mia needs. Nobody knows how to do any of that. You just figure it out as you go." "What if I screw it up?" "Then you screw it up, and we figure out how to fix it together." Clara's eyes were wet. "I don't deserve you." "Stop deciding what you deserve and just tell me what you want." She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, could see the flecks of gold in her gray-blue eyes. "I want this. You, Mia, Sunday mornings and Thursday dinners and terrible burnt toast. I want that too. Even though I'm a disaster? Especially because you're a disaster. Perfect is boring." Clara laughed, wet and broken and real. "We're going to be so bad at this. Probably. But we'll be bad at it together." She kissed him then, soft and tentative and perfect. And Adrian kissed her back, pulling her close, feeling like something that had been broken was finally clicking into place. When they pulled apart, Mia was standing in the doorway, grinning like she'd won the lottery. "Finally," she said. "That took forever." Clara laughed, wiping her eyes. "Sorry for the wait." "It's okay. But you're coming to dinner on Thursday, right? And staying this time?" Clara looked at Adrian, and he nodded. "Yeah," Clara said, "I'll stay." And this time, Adrian believed her. The first week after the birthday party, Adrian kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Clara to panic again, pull back, decide this was all a mistake. But she showed up Thursday for dinner like she'd promised, carrying a bottle of wine and looking nervous in a way that was oddly endearing. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted as soon as she walked in. "Neither do I," Adrian said. "That's not reassuring. It's honest." Mia appeared from her bedroom, took one look at them standing awkwardly in the doorway, and rolled her eyes. "Are you guys going to be weird now?" "Probably," Clara said. "Great. Can we eat?" "I'm starving." Dinner was spaghetti because it was Thursday, and Adrian had stopped pretending he was going to break the routine. They sat at the wobbly table, Mia talking non-stop about a science project involving volcanoes, Clara asking questions that suggested she was actually listening, Adrian watching both of them and feeling something dangerously close to happy. After dinner, Mia retreated to her room to work on homework, leaving Adrian and Clara alone with the dishes. "I can help," Clara offered. "You don't have to." "I want to." They washed in comfortable silence, Adrian cleaning while Clara dried, their hands occasionally brushing in a way that sent electricity up his spine. It was domestic, simple. Everything Clara had probably never experienced in her carefully curated life. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said, setting down a plate. "Sure." "What made you decide to take a chance on me, after everything I put you through?" Adrian thought about it, his hand still in the soapy water. "You showed up." "That's it?" "You showed up to Mia's party, even though you were scared, even though it would have been easier to stay away. That told me everything I needed to know." Clara was quiet for a moment. "I almost didn't come." "But you did, because the alternative was worse. Spending the rest of my life wondering what if. She set down the towel. I've made a lot of calculated decisions in my life. Business moves, career choices, investments, all of it based on data and projections and minimizing risk. And this? This is the least calculated thing I've ever done. And it's terrifying. Adrian turned to face her, drying his hands. Good. How is that good? Because it means it matters. If it didn't scare you, it wouldn't be worth doing. Clara stepped closer, and Adrian could see the vulnerability in her eyes, the fear she was trying to control. I'm going to mess this up. You know that, right? I'm going to work too much and forget important things and probably hurt your feelings without meaning to. And I'm going to burn dinner and say the wrong thing and probably drive you crazy with how stubbornly normal I am. Normal isn't bad. You sure? Because I'm about as far from your world as it gets. My world is exhausting. Normal sounds pretty good right now. Adrian reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture more intimate than he'd intended. We don't have to figure everything out tonight. I'm not good at not having a plan. I noticed. So what do? We take it one day at a time. We're honest when things are hard. We don't run when we get scared. He paused. And maybe we stop overthinking it. Clara smiled, small but real. I don't know how to not overthink things. Then I'll help you learn. She kissed him then, different from the kiss at the party, longer, deeper, full of promise and possibility. And when they pulled apart, Adrian felt like maybe, just maybe, they could actually make this work. The gossip got worse before it got better. Ms. Chen stopped being subtle about her disapproval, making pointed comments whenever she saw them together. Frank mentioned concerns from other residents at least 3 more times. Even at Mia's school, Adrian caught whispers from other parents, felt their judgment like a physical weight. But Clara surprised him. Instead of retreating, she leaned in. When they ran into Ms. Chen in the lobby, Clara introduced herself properly, shook the woman's hand, and spoke about her job with enough casual confidence that Ms. Chen actually seemed impressed despite herself. When Frank brought up concerns again, Clara politely but firmly suggested he direct those concerns to her directly, and if he had specific complaints, she'd be happy to address them through proper channels. The implied threat of legal action was subtle but unmistakable. And at Mia's school, when Emma's mother made a snide comment about certain people getting ideas above their station, Clara simply smiled and said, I think Adrian's station is exactly where it should be. He's a good father, a skilled contractor, and a better man than most people I've met in boardrooms. If that's not worth respecting, I don't know what is. Adrian heard about it secondhand from another parent who'd witnessed the exchange. When he confronted Clara about it that night, she just shrugged. I'm not going to let people talk about you like that, she said. You don't have to defend me. I know I don't have to. I want to. You do the same for me. Yeah, but you're... He stopped. I'm what? You're you. Powerful, successful, intimidating. You don't need me to fight your battles. Maybe not. But it's nice knowing you would. They were in Clara's apartment, Mia asleep on the couch after insisting on a movie night. Adrian sat next to Clara on the floor, both of them leaning against the couch, close enough that their shoulders touched. People are always going to talk, Adrian said, about the age difference, the money difference, all of it. Let them. It doesn't bother you? It used to, but then I realized I've spent my entire adult life caring about what people think, building a reputation, maintaining an image, always being the perfect professional, and I'm exhausted. She turned to look at him. Being with you and Mia, it's the first time in years I've felt like I can just be myself. Messy and imperfect and not having all the answers. I'm not giving that up because some people have opinions. Adrian linked his fingers through hers. You're kind of amazing, you know that? I'm really not. I'm just tired of being afraid. That's what makes it amazing. They sat in comfortable silence, the movie playing quietly in the background, Mia's soft breathing adding to the peace. It felt right, like this was what life was supposed to be, not perfect, not without complications, but real and honest and worth fighting for. I have to go to Singapore next week, Clara said quietly. 3 days, maybe 4. Board meetings. Adrian's stomach sank, but he tried to keep his voice neutral. Okay. I was thinking, would you and Mia want to come? I know it's last minute and school's a factor, but there's a hotel pool and some amazing food and... Clara.
What? You're rambling. You never ramble.
She laughed nervously. I don't want to leave you, either of you. And I know it's impractical and probably weird to bring a guy I've been dating for barely 2 weeks and his kid to a business trip, but yes. Yes? Yes, we'll come. If Mia can miss a few days of school, and you're sure you want us there. Clara's whole face lit up. Really? Really? But you're handling the logistics because I've never left the country and have no idea how any of that works. I can do logistics. Logistics are my specialty. I noticed. She kissed him, quick and happy, and Adrian felt something settle in his chest. This was happening. They were actually doing this. Singapore was overwhelming in the best possible way. The flight alone was an adventure. Mia had never been on a plane before and spent the first hour plastered to the window, narrating everything she saw. Clara worked for part of the flight, but spent more time showing Mia how to use the entertainment system and ordering every snack option available. You're going to spoil her, Adrian said. That's kind of the point. She's going to expect this level of treatment all the time. Good. She deserves it. The hotel was ridiculous. 50 floors, a rooftop infinity pool, rooms bigger than Adrian's entire apartment. Mia ran around exploring everything, discovering the minibar, the fancy bathroom, the view of the city that stretched out like something from a science fiction movie. This is insane, Adrian said, standing at the window. Clara came up beside him, slipping her hand into his. Is it too much? Definitely too much. But I'm not complaining. You can order room service, whatever you want. My company's paying for it. I'm not going to abuse your corporate expense account. It's not abuse if I'm authorizing it. Besides, you should see what some executives expense. Your room service burger will barely register. The next 3 days fell into a pattern. Clara would leave early for meetings, dressed in her armor, perfect suit, perfect hair, that intimidating professional persona firmly in place. Adrian and Mia would explore the city, hitting tourist spots, eating street food that was simultaneously the best and most questionable thing Adrian had ever tasted, taking about 1,000 pictures. In the evenings, Clara would return looking exhausted but happy, and the three of them would have dinner together, sometimes room service, once at a restaurant where the menu was entirely in Mandarin, and they had to point at random items and hope for the best. How are the meetings going? Adrian asked on the second night. Brutal. Half the board wants to expand into new markets. The other half wants to consolidate. I'm stuck in the middle trying to make everyone happy. Can you make everyone happy? No, but I can make the right decision and deal with whoever's unhappy about it. That sounds stressful. It is, but coming back to you two makes it worth it. Mia had fallen asleep at the table, exhausted from a day of walking around gardens and museums. Clara looked at her with such open affection that Adrian felt his throat tighten. She's really attached to you, Adrian said. I'm really attached to her. That doesn't scare you anymore? Clara was quiet for a moment. It terrifies me. But I'm learning to sit with the terror instead of running from it. How's that going? Ask me in 6 months. They got Mia to bed and sat on the balcony overlooking the city, drinking wine Clara had ordered from room service. The air was warm and humid, so different from the November cold they'd left behind. Can I ask you something? Adrian said. Always. Where do you see this going? Us, I mean. Clara took a sip of wine, considering. Honestly? Honestly. I don't know. I've never done this before. Real relationship, the whole package. But I know I don't want it to end. I know I want to keep showing up, keep trying, keep figuring it out with you. She paused. Is that enough? For now, yeah, it's enough. What about you? Where do you see this going? Adrian thought about the question seriously. I see Thursday dinners becoming permanent. I see you at more of Mia's school events. I see us figuring out how to balance your work and my work and making time for what matters. He hesitated. I see something long-term, if you're open to that. Long-term like what? Like maybe eventually we stop maintaining 2 apartments. Like maybe Mia stops calling you Clara and starts calling you something else. Like maybe we build something real and permanent instead of just seeing where things go. Clara's hand was shaking slightly as she set down her wine glass. That's a lot. Too much? No, just, I need to think about it. Not because I don't want it, but because it's big and I want to make sure I can actually commit to it before I say yes. That's fair. You're not upset? Clara, you showed up to Singapore with me. You're here right now instead of at some business dinner networking. You chose us. I can wait for you to catch up with what that means." She kissed him, and it tasted like possibility. The flight home was quieter. Mia slept for most of it, exhausted from 3 days of constant stimulation. Clara worked, but she kept her hand on Adrian's knee under the blanket, a small point of contact that said more than words. "Thank you for coming," she said during one of her breaks from the laptop. "Thank you for inviting us." "I meant what I said about wanting something long-term." "I know. I just need time to figure out the logistics, how to make it actually work. We'll figure it out together." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." She smiled, squeezing his knee, then went back to work. And Adrian sat there feeling like maybe they actually had a shot at this. The reality of their different lives hit hard once they were back in the regular routine. Clara's work schedule was brutal. Early mornings, late nights, constant travel. She missed 2 Thursday dinners in a row, then a Sunday because of an emergency board call. She'd text apologies, promised to make it up to them, but Adrian could see the pattern forming. "She's busy," Mia said one night when Clara canceled again. "Yeah. Do you think she's pulling away again?" "I don't know, baby. Should we be worried?" Adrian wanted to say no. Wanted to reassure his daughter that everything was fine, that Clara was just dealing with work stress, that she'd sworn she wouldn't run again. But he didn't know. And lying to Mia seemed worse than admitting uncertainty. "I think we trust her until she gives us a reason not to," Adrian said finally. "And if she does? Give us a reason not to trust her? Then we deal with it, together." Mia nodded, but she looked worried, and Adrian couldn't blame her because he was worried too. The confrontation came on a Friday night. Clara was supposed to come over for dinner, but texted at 6 saying she was stuck at the office. Adrian responded saying no problem, they'd see her tomorrow. She said maybe, she had more work. He asked if everything was okay. She said fine, just busy. It felt like Seattle all over again. Adrian showed up at her office at 8 o'clock with takeout and determination. The building was mostly empty, just a few people scattered across the floors, the kind of dedicated workers who'd sold their souls to their jobs. Clara's assistant, a tired-looking woman in her 40s, didn't even question him when he walked in. "She's in the conference room," the assistant said. "Fair warning, she's in a mood." "Thanks for the heads up." Clara was indeed in a mood. She sat surrounded by papers and laptop screens, her hair falling out of its clip, still wearing the suit from this morning, but looking significantly less put together. She glanced up when Adrian walked in, surprise flickering across her face. "What are you doing here?" "Bringing dinner. You have to eat." "I ordered something earlier." "When?" "I don't know, 2? 3? "It's 8 o'clock." Clara blinked like she'd lost track of time entirely. "Oh." Adrian set the food down on the one clear space on the table. "What's going on?" "Just work. Big acquisition deal fell through. Now we're scrambling to salvage it or find alternatives." "How long have you been here?" "Since 6 this morning." "Clara, I know it's too much, but this is my job. This is what I do. It doesn't have to be." She laughed bitterly. "Yes, it does. I built this company. I'm responsible for 300 employees and their families. I can't just check out because I want to have dinner with my boyfriend." The word boyfriend hung in the air between them. It was the first time either of them had used it. "I'm not asking you to check out," Adrian said carefully. "I'm asking you to find balance." "There is no balance. Not in this job. Not at this level." "Then maybe you need a different job." Clara's head snapped up. "Excuse me? I'm just saying, if this job means you can't have a life, maybe it's not the right job." "This is my life. I spent 15 years building it. And what do you have to show for it besides money and stress?" "That's not fair." "Isn't it? When's the last time you did something just because it made you happy? When's the last time you weren't working?" "Singapore?" Clara shot back. "I took time off for Singapore. Because I was there, because Mia was there. Not because you wanted to." "I wanted to be with you." "Then be with us. Actually be with us. Not this version where you show up when you can squeeze us into your schedule." Clara stood, anger radiating off her. "You knew what you were getting into. I told you from the beginning that I work a lot." "There's working a lot, and then there's this. You're killing yourself for a job that will replace you in a second if you drop dead at your desk. That's not true." "Isn't it?" You think the board cares about you as a person? You're a resource to them, an asset. The second you stop performing, they'll push you out. You don't know anything about my business. I know enough. I know you're miserable. I know you haven't slept more than 4 hours a night in weeks. I know you're drinking more coffee than water and living on stress and adrenaline and whatever else keeps you up, right? Adrian stepped closer. And I know you're using work as an excuse to avoid dealing with the fact that you're terrified of what we could be. That's not... Yes, it is. Every time things get real, you dive into work. Singapore was good, so you came back and immediately buried yourself in projects. We had a nice weekend, so you scheduled 3 business trips. We're working, so you're sabotaging it. Clara's eyes were bright with anger and tears. I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm trying to do my job and have a relationship, and it's impossible. It's only impossible if you make it impossible. So what do you want from me? You want me to quit? Walk away from everything I built? I want you to decide what actually matters to you. Because right now it seems like work comes first, and we're just the thing you do when you have spare time. That's not fair. Fair or not, it's how it feels. They stared at each other across the conference room table, both breathing hard, both angry, both scared. I love my job, Clara said quietly. I know, but I love you too, and Mia, and I don't know how to do both. Then we figure it out, together. But you have to actually want to figure it out. You have to stop running. I'm not running. I'm here. Are you? Because it feels like you're halfway out the door already. Clara slumped back into her chair, all the fight draining out of her. I don't know how to do this. Any of this. Adrian sat down beside her, close but not touching. Nobody does. That's not an excuse to not try. What if I fail? What if I can't be what you and Mia need? What if you can? Clara was crying now, silent tears tracking down her face. I'm so tired. I know. I'm so tired of being strong and perfect and in control all the time. Then stop. Let yourself be tired. Let yourself need help. Let yourself be human. She turned to him, and Adrian saw all the vulnerabilities she usually kept locked away. I don't know how. Start by eating this food before it gets cold. Then we go home, and you sleep for 12 hours. Then tomorrow we figure out the rest. I have a meeting tomorrow. Cancel it. I can't. Yes, you can. The company won't collapse if you take a Saturday off. And if it does, maybe it wasn't built as well as you thought. Clara laughed wetly. You're kind of brutal when you want to be. Only when it matters. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. I'm sorry for pulling away, for making you feel like you're not important. I know, but Clara, this can't keep happening. We can't build something real if you keep one foot out the door. I know. She was quiet for a moment. What if we tried something? Like what? What if I delegated more? Hired a COO to handle day-to-day operations? I'd still be CEO, still involved in major decisions, but I wouldn't have to be in the weeds on everything. Would that work? I don't know, but it's worth trying, if it means I actually get to have a life outside of work. You sure you want to do that? No, but I'm more sure that I don't want to lose you. Adrian kissed her forehead. Eat your food, then we'll take it one step at a time. They ate cold Chinese food in her conference room at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, and it was the most honest conversation they'd had in weeks. And when they finally left the office, Claire's assistant looking relieved that someone had finally dragged her out, Adrian felt like maybe they'd turned a corner. The changes didn't happen overnight. Clara still worked too much, still had moments where she defaulted to old patterns, still struggled with letting go of control. But she tried. She hired a COO, a woman named Patricia, who'd been with the company for 8 years and knew the business inside and out. She started saying no to meetings that weren't critical. She blocked off Thursday evenings and Sunday mornings as non-negotiable personal time. And slowly, she started showing up. Not just physically, but emotionally. She asked about Adrian's work, actually listened to the answer. She helped Mia with homework, even though math had never been her strong suit. She learned to cook exactly one dish, chicken stir-fry, and was absurdly proud of herself when she didn't burn it. This is actually good, Mia said, surprised. Don't sound so shocked, Clara said. I mean, your first 3 attempts were kind of terrible. Practice makes progress. Is that a corporate saying? It's a me saying. I just made it up. Adrian watched them banter and felt something dangerous and wonderful take root in his chest. This was his life now, this strange, imperfect, beautiful thing they were building together. 2 months after the office confrontation, Clara showed up at Adrian's apartment on a Tuesday night looking nervous. "Everything okay?" Adrian asked. "Can we talk?" His stomach dropped. Those words never meant anything good. "Sure." They sat on the couch. Mia was at Emma's house for a sleepover, which meant they had the place to themselves. Clara twisted her hands in her lap, clearly working up to something. "I've been thinking," she said finally. "About?" "About what you said. About us building something long-term." "Okay. And I think I want that. I know I want that. But I need to know if you're serious. If this is really what you want or if you're just saying what you think I want to hear." Adrian took her hand. "I'm serious. I want you in my life, in Mia's life, permanently, if you'll have us. Even though I'm a workaholic who doesn't know how to cook and sometimes forgets that normal people need sleep. Even though I'm probably going to mess this up 100 more times. I'm going to mess it up too. That's kind of how relationships work." Clara took a shaky breath. "My lease is up in 2 months. Okay. I was thinking maybe I don't renew it." Adrian's heart started pounding. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe it's time to stop pretending we're just neighbors who happen to spend all our time together. Maybe it's time to actually commit to this." She looked at him directly. "I want to move in, with you and Mia, if you want that too." Adrian couldn't breathe. "You're sure?" Terrified, but sure. "This apartment is tiny, like barely fits 2 people tiny. Then we find something bigger, something that's ours, all 3 of us." "Clara, I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I spent my whole life playing it safe and being practical, and it got me a great career and an empty apartment. I don't want safe anymore. I want this. I want us." Adrian pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "Yes." "Yes?" "Yes, move in. Yes to finding something together. Yes to all of it." Clara laughed, the sound shaky but happy. "Yeah? Yeah. But you're handling the apartment search because I have no idea how to negotiate a lease. I can do that. Negotiation is literally my job." They sat there on his worn couch in his cramped apartment, holding each other, both terrified and excited and ready for whatever came next. And when Mia came home the next day and they told her the news, she just grinned and said, "Finally, this place was getting way too small for all your emotional baggage anyway." Smart kid, Adrian thought. Smart, observant, perfect kid. Finding an apartment that worked for all 3 of them turned out to be harder than any of them expected. Claire's budget was essentially unlimited, which should have made things easier, but somehow didn't. Adrian kept vetoing places that cost more per month than he made in 3. Claire kept dismissing places that didn't have proper office space, and Mia had exactly one requirement that she refused to compromise on: a bedroom big enough for both a bed and the elaborate blanket fort setup she'd been planning since they announced the move. "This is impossible," Clara said after their 5th viewing in 2 weeks. They stood in what the realtor had called a charming 3-bedroom in a transitional neighborhood, which apparently meant old building, sketchy block, and a kitchen that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1975. "We'll find something," Adrian said, though he was starting to doubt it. "Maybe we're being too picky," Mia offered from where she was testing the echo in the empty living room. "We're not being picky enough," Clara muttered. "That bathroom had mold." "Character mold," the realtor interjected hopefully. "Very vintage." Clara gave her a look that probably incinerated junior executives on a regular basis. "We'll pass." They left, and Adrian drove them back toward Riverside in his truck, which now felt cramped with 3 people, but also right in a way he couldn't explain. Clara sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through rental listings on her phone, making small, disgusted noises at regular intervals. Mia sat in back, singing something off-key about apartments and adventures. "What if we bought instead of rented?" Clara said suddenly. Adrian nearly swerved into the next lane. "What? Bought? A house? It would give us more options, better neighborhoods, actual space." "Clara, I can't afford to buy a house." "I can." "That's not how this works." "Why not?" "Because we're supposed to be partners. Equal. If you buy a house, it's your house. I'm just living there." Clara set down her phone.
What if we bought it together? With what money? I'm doing okay now with the contracting work, but I don't have down payment kind of money.
So I put down more. We work out an agreement that makes sense for both of us. You contribute what you can, I contribute what I can, and we own it together. That doesn't sound equal. Equal doesn't mean identical, it means fair. We both bring what we have to the table. She paused. Unless you're too proud to let me help. Adrian gripped the steering wheel tighter. It's not about pride, isn't it? It's about not wanting you to resent me down the line, not wanting to be the guy who needed his rich girlfriend to buy him a house. First of all, I'm not that rich. Comfortable? Yes. Private jet rich? No. Second, you wouldn't be the guy I bought a house for. You'd be the guy I chose to build a life with. There's a difference. Dad, I think Clara's making sense, Mia piped up from the back. Nobody asked you, Adrian said, but there was no heat in it. I'm just saying, if someone wants to buy me a house with a big bedroom, I'm not going to argue about pride. Clara laughed. See? Mia gets it. Adrian wanted to keep arguing, wanted to insist on doing things the traditional way, the way that didn't make him feel like he was taking advantage. But the truth was, traditional hadn't worked for either of them so far. Clara had followed all the traditional career paths and ended up lonely and exhausted. He'd tried to do everything himself and barely kept his head above water. Maybe it was time to try something different. Okay, he said finally. Okay? Okay, we look at houses. Together. And we figure out an arrangement that works for both of us. But I'm contributing, Clara. I'm not going to be dead weight in this relationship. You could never be dead weight. You bring more to this than money ever could. Like what? Like knowing how to fix things. Like making me laugh. Like keeping me grounded when I start spiraling into work mode. Like being someone I actually want to come home to. She reached over and took his hand. You're not a charity case. You're my partner. Start acting like it. From the back seat, Mia made a gagging noise. You guys are so cheesy. Get used to it, Clara said. We're probably going to get worse. They found the house 3 weeks later in a neighborhood that split the difference between Clara's standards and Adrian's comfort level. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a yard that needed work but had potential, and a detached garage that Adrian immediately started planning to convert into a workshop. The kitchen was dated but functional, the living room had good light, and Mia's room was big enough for a fort, and then some. It needs work, the realtor said apologetically. I do work, Adrian said. That's kind of my whole thing. Clara walked through each room slowly, and Adrian tried to read her expression. This was so far from the sleek modern apartment she'd had before, so far from the minimalist aesthetic she seemed to prefer. It was a family house, a messy, lived-in, real-person house. What do you think? He asked when they ended up back in the kitchen. Clara turned to face him, and her eyes were wet. I think it's perfect. Yeah? Yeah, it feels like home already. They put in an offer that night. It was accepted 2 days later, and suddenly they were homeowners. Or rather, Clara was the majority owner, and Adrian owned a smaller percentage that still felt huge to him, and they had a legal agreement drawn up by Clara's lawyer that protected both of them, but also acknowledged that this was a partnership, not a transaction. This is really happening, Adrian said the night they signed the papers. Having second thoughts? Clara asked. Terrified thoughts, but not second thoughts. Good, because I already gave notice on my apartment, and if you bail now, I'm homeless. You'd never be homeless. You'd just buy a penthouse and forget about us. Clara kissed him, soft and sure. I could never forget about you. The move happened in stages over the course of a month. Clara's stuff came first. Her furniture, her books, her absurd number of business clothes that took up an entire closet. Then Adrian's things, which fit into his truck in 3 trips and made him acutely aware of how little he'd accumulated over the years. Finally, Mia's room, which she insisted on organizing herself, resulting in a system that made sense to absolutely nobody but her. Where are your books? Adrian asked, surveying the chaos. Books are with stuffed animals because they're both for bedtime. And your clothes? Dresser, obviously. What about your art supplies? Closet with the games because they're both creative activities. Clara appeared in the doorway. I love that you have a system. Thank you. Dad thinks it's weird. Dad thinks a lot of things are weird, Adrian said. Doesn't mean I don't appreciate the logic. They ordered pizza that first night because neither of them had the energy to cook, and they ate sitting on the living room floor because they hadn't fully set up the furniture yet. It was chaotic and imperfect, and nothing like the pristine magazine-worthy homes Clara probably could have afforded. "This is good," Mia said, tomato sauce on her chin. "It's pizza," Adrian said. "Pizza is always good." "No, I mean this. All of it. The house. Us. It feels right." Clara reached over and wiped the sauce from Mia's face. "It does, doesn't it?" Adrian looked at his daughter and the woman he loved sitting in their new house eating pizza on the floor, and he felt something settle deep in his chest. This was his family. Messy and unconventional and absolutely right. The neighborhood judgment started almost immediately. Clara stood out. Her car alone probably cost more than most of the houses on the block, and her work clothes screamed money in a way that made people assume things. Adrian heard the whispers at the hardware store, caught the looks when they were out together, felt the weight of assumption everywhere they went. But this time he didn't care as much. Because Clara was here, solid and real and committed. Because Mia was thriving, making friends with the kids next door, coming home happy and loud and completely herself. Because for the first time in years, Adrian felt like he was building something that would last. The real test came at the neighborhood block party in June. It was one of those mandatory fun events where everyone was expected to show up with food and forced smiles and pretend they enjoyed socializing with people they normally avoided. Adrian had planned to skip it, but Mia begged and Clara said it might be good for community relations, so they went. The whispers started the moment they arrived. Adrian caught fragments. "That's the CEO, living with a contractor. What's someone like that doing here? Probably won't last." Clara heard them too. He could tell by the way her spine straightened, her shoulders going back in that defensive posture she used in business meetings. "We can leave," Adrian said quietly. "No, I'm tired of running from gossip." They set up at one of the tables, Clara's homemade cookies, burnt on the bottom but edible, arranged on a plate next to Adrian's potato salad. Mia immediately ran off to play with other kids, leaving them alone with the adults. Miss Chen approached first, because of course she did. "Clara, Adrian, what a surprise to see you here." "We live here," Clara said pleasantly. "Why wouldn't we be?" "Oh, I just thought someone of your status might find these events beneath them." Clara smiled, sharp and polite. "My status is neighbor, same as everyone else." Miss Chen's expression soured, but before she could respond, Frank appeared with his wife, both of them looking uncomfortable. "Hey, Adrian, Clara, good to see you guys." "You too," Adrian said, meaning it. Frank had been decent after the initial gossip died down. They made small talk for a few minutes before Frank's wife asked the question everyone was clearly thinking. "So, how are you two making it work?" "The whole different worlds thing," Clara answered before Adrian could. "We're not making it work. We're just living, same as anyone else. We have jobs, we have a kid, we have a house that needs too much repair work and a grocery list we keep forgetting to update. The fact that I wear suits and he wears work boots doesn't change any of that. But the money difference is nobody's business but ours," Clara finished firmly. "And frankly, I'm tired of people treating Adrian like he's less than because he works with his hands instead of sitting in boardrooms. He builds things, real, tangible things that people need. I push numbers around and attend meetings. His work is probably more valuable than mine will ever be." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Adrian felt his chest tighten with something that might have been pride or love or probably both. "I think what Clara's trying to say," Adrian added, "is that we're just two people who care about each other trying to build a life together. It's not always easy, and we don't always get it right, but we keep showing up. That's all anyone can do." Frank's wife nodded slowly. "I think that's really beautiful." "Thank you," Clara said, her professional mask slipping just enough to show real emotion. The conversation moved on to safer topics: the weather, the new stop sign on Oak Street, someone's terrible lawn care habits. But Adrian noticed the shift. People were looking at them differently, not with judgment or curiosity, but with something closer to respect. Later, when they were helping clean up, one of the other neighborhood moms approached Clara. "I owe you an apology," she said. It was Emma's mother, the one who'd warned Adrian about optics months ago. Clara looked surprised. "For what?" "For assuming the worst. For making judgments about your relationship without knowing anything about it. My husband reminded me that I did the same thing when we first got together. He was a musician. I was pre-law. Everyone said it would never work. But we've been married 15 years now." She paused. I should have known better than to project my insecurities onto you. Claire's expression softened. Thank you. That means a lot. For what it's worth, Mia is a great kid. And I've seen the way you are with her. That's real. Whatever else people want to say, that's real. After she left, Adrian slipped his arm around Claire's waist. You okay? Better than okay. I think we might have just won over the neighborhood. Is that what we were doing? That's what I was doing. You were just being yourself. Is that a compliment? The highest one I know how to give. They walked home as the sun set, Mia running ahead of them, still buzzing with energy from playing all afternoon. Their house, their actual house that they owned together, came into view, and Adrian felt a surge of gratitude so intense it almost hurt. Thank you, he said. Clara looked up at him. For what? For staying, for fighting for this, for being brave enough to choose us even when it was scary. Thank you for giving me something worth being brave for. They stood there on the sidewalk in the fading light, and Adrian thought about all the ways their lives had changed over the past year. All the fear and uncertainty and moments where it could have fallen apart. All the times they'd chosen to stay instead of run. Love, he realized, wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone worth fighting for, worth showing up for, worth choosing every single day even when it was hard. Summer turned to fall, and their life together developed a rhythm that felt natural despite its unconventionality. Clara still worked too much sometimes, but she'd learned to set boundaries, to say no to things that didn't matter, to come home. Adrian's contracting business grew steadily, the Riverside Plaza project opening doors to bigger clients, better opportunities. Mia started fourth grade with confidence that came from knowing she was loved and supported by two people who'd bend over backward for her. They had their rough patches. Clara forgot about parent-teacher conferences, and Adrian had to cover. Adrian double-booked himself for work and missed a dinner Clara had planned. Mia went through a phase where she played them against each other, testing boundaries, seeing if this new family structure would hold up under pressure. But they worked through it. They talked instead of shutting down. They compromised instead of demanding. They chose each other, repeatedly, until choosing became as natural as breathing. The proposal happened on a random Tuesday in October. No grand plans, no elaborate setup. Just the three of them sitting on the back porch after dinner, watching the sun set over their slightly overgrown yard. I've been thinking, Adrian said. Dangerous, Clara teased. I'm serious. He turned to face her, suddenly nervous in a way he hadn't been since he'd first told her how he felt. We've built something really good here. The three of us. Something real and solid and worth protecting. Okay, Clara said carefully. And I know we're not traditional. I know we've done everything backward and weird and nothing like we're supposed to, but that's kind of our thing, right? Doing things our own way? Adrian, what are you… He pulled out the ring. Nothing fancy. He couldn't afford fancy, and Clara wouldn't have wanted it anyway. Simple silver band with a small stone that caught the fading light. Marry me, he said. Not because it's what we're supposed to do or because it makes sense on paper. Marry me because I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life choosing you. Marry me because Mia deserves to have this be official and permanent. Marry me because you're the best thing that ever happened to us, and I don't want to imagine a future without you in it. Clara was crying, hands covering her mouth, eyes wide with shock and joy and fear and everything in between. Yes, she whispered. Yeah? Yes. Absolutely yes. He slipped the ring on her finger with shaking hands, and she kissed him while Mia cheered from her spot on the porch steps. Finally, Mia said. I thought you'd never ask. You knew about this? Clara asked. He asked my permission last week. Obviously, I said yes, your family. Have been for months. This just makes it official. Clara pulled Mia into the hug. The three of them tangled together in the cooling October evening, and Adrian felt something click into place. This was his family, messy and imperfect and absolutely his. The wedding was small, held in their backyard 6 months later on a bright April morning. Just close friends, a few co-workers, Mia's entire fourth grade class because she'd insisted. Clara wore a simple white dress that probably cost more than Adrian's truck, but looked perfect on her. Mia wore her birthday party dress from 2 years ago, still her favorite despite having long since grown out of the sleeves. Adrian wore the one suit he owned, slightly too tight in the shoulders, but good enough. Marcus officiated, He'd gotten ordained online specifically for this, and his speech was equal parts touching and inappropriate, exactly what Adrian had expected. These two people, Marcus said, have done everything wrong according to conventional wisdom. Wrong timing, wrong backgrounds, wrong everything. But somehow they made it right. They showed up for each other. They chose each other. They built something real out of nothing but determination and love and apparently a lot of burnt cookies. People laughed. Clara blushed. Adrian grinned. So here's what I know, Marcus continued. Love isn't about finding someone who fits perfectly into your life. It's about finding someone worth rearranging your life for. Someone worth fighting for. Someone worth choosing every single day even when it's hard. These two figured that out, and if they can make it work, there's hope for the rest of us. The vows were simple. Clara promised to keep showing up, to keep choosing them, to keep learning how to balance work and life and love. Adrian promised to keep believing in her, to keep supporting her dreams, to keep reminding her that she was more than her job. They both promised to love Mia, to give her the family she deserved, to show up for the big moments and the small ones. When they kissed, Mia made the same gagging noise she always did, but she was smiling. The reception was loud and chaotic and perfect. Someone's kid knocked over the cake table. Clara's work assistant got drunk and gave a speech about what a nightmare boss Clara used to be before she learned about work-life balance. Mia taught Clara's board members how to do the Macarena, which was simultaneously hilarious and horrifying. Late in the evening, after most of the guests had left, Adrian found Clara sitting on the back porch, shoes off, makeup slightly smudged, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. "Hey, wife," he said, sitting beside her. "Hey, husband." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "This was a good day." "Yeah, it was. I never thought I'd have this. A wedding, a family, a life outside of work. I'd convinced myself I didn't need it. And now I can't imagine going back. This," she gestured at the yard, the house, the remnants of their celebration. "This is everything." Mia emerged from the house, still wearing her dress, carrying 3 glasses of sparkling cider. "I thought we should toast, just the 3 of us." They raised their glasses and Mia said, to family. The one we chose and the one we built. To showing up even when it's scary. To burnt cookies and terrible dancing and houses that need too much work. To doing things our own way. To doing things our own way, Clara and Adrian echoed. They clinked glasses and drank, and Adrian thought about everything that had led them here. All the fear and doubt and moments where it could have gone differently. All the choices they'd made to stay instead of run, to fight instead of surrender, to believe in something bigger than their individual fears. People always wanted to know the secret to making relationships work across different backgrounds, different lives, different worlds. Like there was some formula you could follow, some set of rules that guaranteed success. But Adrian had learned there was no formula. There was just showing up, being honest, choosing each other repeatedly until choosing became automatic, taking risks on impractical things, believing that love was worth the uncertainty. He looked at Clara, brilliant and flawed and absolutely his. He looked at Mia, growing too fast and too smart and completely theirs. He looked at the house they'd built together, the life they'd created from nothing but determination and hope. And he realized that all of this, was what happened when you stopped letting fear make your decisions. When you stopped caring what other people thought you should want and started pursuing what actually made you happy. When you found people worth being brave for and chose to be brave. "What are you thinking about?" Clara asked. "Just that we did it. Against all odds and everyone's expectations, we actually did it." "Did what?" "Built something real, something that lasts." Clara squeezed his hand. "We're still building it, every day." "I know, and I can't wait to see what we build next." They sat there together as night fell, their daughter between them, their future stretching out uncertain but promising. And Adrian thought about all the single fathers out there raising kids alone, wondering if they'd ever find someone who'd love them and their children as a package deal. About all the successful women convinced they had to choose between career and family. About everyone who'd been told that love required perfect circumstances, perfect timing, perfect compatibility. He hoped his story, their story, might give them hope. Might show them that sometimes the best things in life come from the most improbable combinations. That different backgrounds and different lives aren't obstacles to overcome, but strengths to celebrate. That fear is normal, but doesn't have to be defining. Most of all, he hoped people would understand that love isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be brave enough to complete yourself. Someone who sees your mess and your flaws and your fears and chooses to stay anyway. Someone worth rearranging your entire life for. Clara had been that person for him. He'd been that person for her. And together, they'd created a life neither of them had known they were missing. That was the thing about taking risks on impractical things, Adrian thought. Sometimes they didn't work out. Sometimes they crashed and burned spectacularly. But sometimes, just sometimes, they turned into everything you never knew you needed. And that made all the fear, all the uncertainty, all the judgment and doubt and hard conversations worth it. Because at the end of the day, love wasn't about what made sense on paper. It was about what made sense in your heart. And his heart had known Clara was worth fighting for from the moment she'd stood in that hallway surrounded by groceries, too proud to admit she needed help. Just like she'd known he was worth fighting for when he'd shown up at her office with takeout and refused to let her self-destruct. Just like they'd both known Mia deserved parents who showed up, who tried, who loved her enough to work through their issues instead of running from them. "I love you," Adrian said to both of them. "We love you too," Mia said, speaking for herself and Clara both. And in that moment, sitting on their back porch in the house they'd built together, Adrian knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Not because it was easy, not because it made sense, not because anyone had told him this was the right path, but because he'd chosen it, they'd chosen it, together. And that made all the difference.